And included in paying care for membership was Endo, correct?
I believe Endo was a member.
Purdue, correct?
Yes.
Cephalon, correct?
I believe Cephalon was a member.
That organization included collaborative partners who worked with your company to address policy concerns related to pain management, correct?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by collaborative partners. They were part of the Pain Care Forum, and we were part of the Pain Care Forum.
And I mean just what the word says. You collaborated with those members as part of the Pain Care Forum. Yes?
We were part of the Pain Care Forum. We participated in conference calls on occasion. And those other companies just mentioned were part of the Pain Care Forum. We didn't collaborate with them on specific things.
You were part of an organization for at least 11 years, correct?
I think it was less than that, but
And is it your testimony that your company did not collaborate with the other organizations? Yes or no?
it's my testimony that we were part of the Pain Care Forum and they were part of the Pain Care Forum. So we were at meetings together.
That's it?
It's not, I just don't know what you mean by collaboration.
What do you think collaborate means?
Collaborate for what? For what purpose? To talk to them? Did we talk to companies, other companies?
Listen, sir, it's your job to educate yourself and prepare to talk about your membership in the Pain Care Forum. I don't think it's appropriate to ask me questions about what you did. I want to know what you know about what you did.
I think he's just trying to understand what you mean by the word collaboration.
You need me to pull a definition out of collaborate? I'll be happy to. Do you not know what that means?
I know what collaborate means.
What do you think it means?
To work with interested parties or other parties.
Using your definition, did J&J work with other parties or interested parties on the Pain Care Forum? Yes or no?
We were part of the Pain Care Forum. These other parties were part of the Pain Care Forum. So we would work with them as a member of the Pain Care Forum.
And by your definition of collaborate, that fits your definition, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Now, going back to the 2014 time period, isn't it true that because of the negative publicity and ramifications of the opioid crisis, J&J decided to drop its membership from the Pain Care Forum? That's true, isn't it?
I don't know the purposes or why the decision was made to exit the Pain Care Forum.
You don't know?
No, I don't.
Isn't it true that that decision was also part of an overall plan to divest yourself of Tasmanian Alkaloids and Ramco?
That was a business decision that I would not have been involved in, and it was beyond the area that I focus on. So I don't know why a business decision was made to, as you said, divest themselves of those companies.
Well, you testified that you think after 2014 you were no longer part of the Pain Care Forum, correct?
That's correct.
Now, does that mean you weren't part of it, or you're just not still paying dues?
Based on the conversations I had with the people that were at still at J&J, and all the documentation that I looked at, I could not verify a payment of dues to the Pain Care Forum.
But you still could be getting information from the Pain Care Forum.
Yes, we could.
Pain Care Forum doesn't have an actual office, does it?
No, it doesn't.
The Pain Care Forum doesn't have an address, does it?
Not that I'm aware of.
To your knowledge, did the Pain Care Forum have a person that was designated to accept service of a subpoena or legal paper?
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know.
I'd like to call the Pain Care Forum up. What's their phone number?
I'm not familiar if they have a phone number.
They don't have a phone number, do they?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did they have something like a website or email domain that said, for example, johndoe@pcf.com or pcf.org or pcf.net? That's what I mean. Did they have anything like that?
Based on everything I've looked at, I've never seen anything like that.
You've never seen it?
I have not seen an email address with a domain as you suggested with PCF.
Does the PCF have a chairman?
Based on everything, again, that I reviewed and spoken with my to have been involved in any meaningful way with PCF. I don't know of a chairman of the PCF.
It doesn't have a CEO either, does it?
Again, I've not seen or any information that would suggest it has a CEO.
You familiar with Google?
Yes.
You know how to use Google?
Yeah, you click on it to look for information.
Is it something you've done?
I've used Google before.
Okay. You know how to use it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a computer, it's connected to the internet. Google's pulled up. Now I'm going for you to do a search for me on the pain care form and see if you can find out the questions I just asked you. I want to see. The pain care form exists. You can find out where it's located. Anything. You can tell me in the jury what you find out.
Well, I can't have to put anything in here. Okay.
What search term did you just put in?
I just put in pain care form.
To Google.
Yes.
And did you return?
Not yet.
What's your return? So that was the search term you chose. Did results generate?
Yeah, I think you instructed me to use those terms, but it did pop up a number of things.
Is there anything that's popped up there using Google that shows that there's such a thing as the pain care form having a location or actual organization? Or let me start, is there a website for the pain care form?
If you want to look at the various websites and click on them, feel free to look at what they are. Take your time. We have 3 hours to do this.
Did you find anything?
On the first page, hold on, let me do this.
I think the witnesses have trouble clicking on the different links. If Mr. Docker, you want to help them?
If I was going to look at a particular link, is there any? How did you do that? Okay.
I'm happy to do it for you. You can look at it and make sure I'm doing it honestly.
So, Mr. Beckworth, what is your question?
Can you find that the pain care forum has an actual address?
Based on the Google term that I put in the first page that popped up, I didn't see anything specifically identifying the pain care forum. There are a lot of different things related to pain. There are probably hundreds of different links that you could research, but there's nothing on the first page.
Did you do that kind of research before you came in?
I did not.
You know if your attorneys did it for you?
We didn't discuss their pain care forum research to look at stuff on the internet, and I didn't do anything personally.
Did you see anything in the generated results there that gave a website, phone number, or state of registration for the pain care forum?
In what I just saw, I didn't see any website associated with the pain care forum.
Okay. All right, so using those definitions, not openly shown, engaged in or about, or a hiding place, shelter. That's what I mean by covert. Who regulates covert organizations like the pain care forum?
Again, I'm not, everything I've looked at, I don't know who regulates the pain care forum. I don't consider them a covert or organization.
Well, let's talk about that. Where do they meet?
Based on the information that I reviewed in the documents, there would be, when they had speakers present, they had met at various disease groups, organizations.
Is the pain care forum's address openly shown?
I'm not familiar with the pain care address.
Is the pain care
Forum address?
Yes, sir.
In my review of all the documents, I did not see an address for the pain care forum.
so it's not openly shown?
In the materials I reviewed, I did not see an address to the pain care forum.
You also just Googled it. Didn't show up on the first page entries, did it?
When I looked, did Google it per your recommended terms, I did not see an address pop up for the pain care forum.
In your review of 200 or so documents, was the phone number of the pain care forum openly shown?
Again, when in my review of all the documents and emails and I did not see an address or a telephone number of the Pain Care Forum.
And in all that review and looking at Google, was the email address or website of the Pain Care Forum openly shown?
Can you repeat the question, please?
In your review of all those documents, was the email address or website of the Pain Care Forum openly shown?
Based on my recollection of everything that I looked at in preparation for the deposition today, I did not see an address of the Pain Care Forum.
Did you find any recognition of this organization being duly organized under any state?
In the material, again, in the materials that I looked at, and they were many materials and conversations I had, I did not find the Pain Care Forum in a, what was the term used, state recognition?
Duly organized in any state?
I did not find anything in my research about that issue.
I bet you know and could find publicly where Johnson & Johnson's headquartered, couldn't you?
I could find where J&J is located.
You could find a phone number for J&J, couldn't you?
Yes, that J&J has a telephone number.
You have an email address with a J&J or some other domain on it, correct? Company email?
I do have a company email.
J&J has a website?
I believe J&J has a website, though I don't think I've looked at it in years.
It's all right there for the public to find out, right?
Are you talking about its website?
All of that.
The information about J&J could be found.
Easily?
Yes.
But not Pain Care Forum.
Well, based on all my analysis and all my review of the materials, I did not, again, find an address for the Pain Care Forum.
Because the Pain Care Forum was a covert group that J&J and its competitors participated in, correct?
Again, I will say that the Pain Care Forum, as I pointed out at the beginning, was a group of organizations focused on policy, public policy related to pain. And there was nothing covert about it.
Except that it had no address, no email address, no registered agent, no corporate structure, and no way to be found, right?
Repeat the question, please. I'm going to make sure I have it all.
Except that it had no address, no email address, no registered agent, no corporate structure, and no way to be found, right?
Based on everything I know about the Pain Care Forum and the review of the materials that I looked at, I did not find an address or a telephone number or a website about the Pain Care Forum.
Why did you join the Pain Care Forum?
Why did J&J join the Pain Care Forum?
Yes, sir.
The one, we were interested in pain policy, and we heard that the forum was starting for an opportunity to sit with others and talk about pain policy, pain management issues.
It was a place where J&J could coordinate with other parties interested in pain medicine, correct?
It was, I would rephrase that and say, it was an opportunity to be with interested parties and to discuss pain management issues.
The Pain Care Forum was a forum to coordinate and focus commitments to action regarding public policy issues that affect the treatment of pain, correct?
It was a organization of interested parties, disease groups, patient groups, pharmaceutical companies, other stakeholders interested in public policy related to pain management.
For the purpose of coordinating action regarding public policy issues, correct?
It was, the Pain Care Forum was put together to exchange and share information about pain care forum, pain care management related to public policy.
Maybe we could try something. What would happen if we went back on Google and tried to find the Pain Care Forum's organizational chart, would it exist?
I don't know.
Sure didn't come up when you searched it, did it?
When we looked at the Google search, I did not see anything about the Pain Care Forum.
What was its goals?
The goals of the Pain Care Forum?
Sure.
To provide a platform or forum for the exchange of information and ideas related to pain care policy.
That's not really what its goals are, right? That's not why the Pain Care Forum existed. You know that.
That's what I said to you is what I believe the Pain Care Forum was intended to do, to provide a forum for dialogue on pain public policy related to pain management.
The Pain Care Forum existed to coordinate efforts among its membership to first impact federal policy related to pain medication treatment, correct?
The Pain Care Forum would provide letters or comments on particular issues
That's it.
related to federal policy.
And the Pain Care Forum members work together to track and impact state legislative efforts regarding the use of pain medicine, correct?
I know in the review of all the materials, I saw a couple instances where state activities were mentioned.
And the Pain Care Forum existed for its members to work together to try to grade states based on the economic impact of state policies regarding pain treatment, correct?
To the best of my knowledge and the materials I read, I didn't see anything about the Pain Care Forum grading state policies.
You didn't see that.
No. In the review of the materials that I looked at, I don't remember seeing anything about public relations companies or organizations promoting pain, whatever the terminology used.
Did Johnson & Johnson ever stand up to any other members of the Pain Care Forum and tell them that you disagreed with what the Pain Care Forum was doing?
As I mentioned, in the review of the materials, the Pain Care Forum would sometimes have sign-on letters on a particular issue. And J&J was a passive participant in the Pain Care Forum, and while we did on a couple occasions sign on to a letter, we would frequently not participate to sign on to a letter that the other members of the Pain Care Forum were interested in moving.
Well, passive is a pretty broad term, would you agree?
I think it's pretty clear.
Well, you actively chose to join, correct?
We were a member of the Pain Care Forum.
You actively chose to pay dues, correct?
We paid dues.
You also paid for other organizations to participate in the Pain Care Forum, correct?
Again, I'm not familiar with, I know we, as J&J, were able to ascertain we paid our dues to the Pain Care Forum for a number of years.
Is writing a check an active or passive endeavor?
It's an active endeavor.
In the year after, Purdue pled guilty to the criminal federal felony of misbranding OxyContin. Did your company withdraw from the Pain Care Forum?
No, we were still a member of the Pain Care Forum in 2007.
That's right. Johnson & Johnson chose to remain a member of the Pain Care Forum after Purdue pled guilty to the federal felony of criminal misbranding, correct?
We were still a member of the Pain Care Forum.
With Purdue?
And many other companies.
Including Purdue?
Yes.
You chose to remain in an organization in which you paid dues, in which Purdue was a member, correct?
We were still a member of the Pain Care Forum, and Purdue Pharma was part of that Pain Care Forum as well.
So when you brought Nucynta to market, your company itemized its dues payment to the Pain Care Forum as part of the advertising budget. Do you know that?
I saw, in review of the documentation, I saw a document which showed a profit center related to the Nucynta brand.
No, that's not what I'm talking about, profit center. Your company itemized payments to join and participate in the Pain Care Forum as part of an advertising budget for its branded drug, correct?
J&J is a large company. There are thousands of departments, thousands of line items, and it's not uncommon that you would use a profit center to pay for an activity or a sponsorship or a membership.
Yes, sir, I didn't ask that.
Doesn't mean that it was related to advertising. I saw the document, I saw where it was checked, and I'm telling you that it came out of a profit center. The money was probably in that profit center. It had, the Pain Care Forum did not work on, brand-specific activities. They focused on public policy, not brand activities.
Did your company budget dues payments to the Pain Care Forum as part of an advertising budget for your branded drug? Yes or no?
The $2,000, which was paid to the Pain Care Forum for the, and I don't recall the year you're talking about, came out of that profit center.
It was, the box that was checked was advertising, correct?
It did say advertising.
Thank you. Did anyone at J&J ever try to stop any specific conduct by the Pain Care Forum?
The Pain Care Forum would, do, as I mentioned, do letters of support for perhaps a particular piece of legislation or an issue, and we would think independently. We would not just go along with what other companies felt.
In your preparation, your experience, all that you bring in here today, have you seen any evidence at all that Johnson & Johnson ever told the Pain Care Forum that J&J disapproved of the Pain Care Forum's conduct? Yes or no?
In the preparation of the documents I read, I didn't see a letter that to the Pain Care Forum on that issue.
Based on all your experience and preparation, you've never seen any evidence whatsoever that Johnson & Johnson made a statement to the Pain Care Forum that it did not support the conduct it produced, correct?
I did not, in the documents I looked at, find anything related to the statement of the Pain Care Forum about Purdue.
And there's no evidence that Johnson & Johnson ever went to the Pain Care Forum and made a statement of disapproval or rejection of the conduct of Cephalon, is there?
Again, reviewing all the documents that I looked at carefully, I did not see a mention of J&J going to the Pain Care Forum with concerns about Cephalon's activities.
There's no evidence whatsoever that J&J ever went to the Pain Care Forum and said, we disapprove of your conduct in the Pain Care Forum.
Who's your conduct?
The Pain Care Forum. There's no evidence that J&J ever went to the Pain Care Forum and said, orally or in writing, we disapprove of the conduct of the Pain Care Forum. Correct?
In the materials I looked at, I didn't see anything directed to the Pain Care Forum related to that issue.
Did you ever withdraw because of some strategy that the Pain Care Forum undertook?
Did we withdraw from the Pain Care Forum?
Yes, sir.
We did not withdraw from the Pain Care Forum until it appears 2014.
We talked a little about regulation. It's true that the FDA does not regulate the Pain Care Forum as an entity, correct?
I'm not sure what the FDA does in terms of the Pain Care Forum.
Well, it does not regulate the Pain Care Forum, correct?
I would not believe that the FDA would regulate the Pain Care Forum.
You see no evidence that the either the FDA or the DEA regulated the pain care form as an entity?
I'm not familiar with any regulation by the FDA or the DEA on the pain care form.
The truth is, the pain care form was a loophole for you guys, wasn't it?
I wouldn't characterize it as a loophole. We were a member of the pain care form.
Which was an unregulated entity, correct?
The
Pain care form was an unregulated entity.
based on my knowledge, and I don't think it was regulated by an organization.
It had no official organization registered in any state, correct?
I'm not familiar with any registration in a state.
And therefore, the pain care form was allowed or was utilized by its members to disseminate statements that the members themselves could not make.
If the pain care form made a statement, it didn't mean all the members were aligned with that activity. It's like J&J would think independently.
Did you ever think independently to the degree that you said, don't make a statement, pain care form?
I'm not familiar with that. As I pointed out earlier, the pain care form would, on occasion, have a letter of support, or assign a letter of support for a particular issue. And companies and organizations, disease groups could sign on. And I know J&J made decisions not to sign on pain care forum communications because we did not think it aligned with our work.
You never pulled funding, ever, prior to 2014.
I said, repeat that, please.
I would like for you to testify and tell the jury every specific instance during Johnson & Johnson's membership in the pain care forum where your company rejected or opposed any conduct by any pain care forum member. Please list everyone.
I'm not familiar with communications or statements we made about other pain care forum members.
So is your answer that you cannot list any specific instance where your company rejected or opposed any specific conduct by a pain care forum member?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Can you list even one?
Again, not that I'm familiar with, not that I recall.
You're saying that J&J operated independently of the pain care forum? Is that your testimony? Are you sure about that?
I'm saying that the pain care forum would sometimes have letters of support for a particular issue, and J&J, we didn't agree with that, and many times we didn't. We did not sign, be a company that would sign on to a letter that would come out from the pain care forum.
Now, in the pain care forum, you also had meetings from time to time where you would discuss policy and how the pain care forum wanted to act or react to certain issues, correct?
No, I think as I stated earlier, J&J was a passive participant in the pain care forum. I know from speaking to my colleagues that on occasion one of them would participate in a conference call or attend a meeting if there was a speaker there that was of interest to them.
I'm going to hand you what's marked as placed into the 4. And have you ever seen Exhibit 4 before, sir?
It doesn't look familiar.
The pain care forum would send out agenda notices to members of the pain care forum, correct?
Yes, they would.
And this was dated November 18th, correct?
It is.
And it specifically shows that you're having a pain care forum meeting to update the National Pain Policy Act implementation, correct?
It says update on the National Pain Policy Act implementation.
You also met to discuss meetings with the Institute of Medicine, correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
And to discuss membership on the Iowa committee, correct?
That's correct.
Page 56. Teddy's kind of weird, it's kind of sliding across. see Exhibit 6?
Yes, I do.
What's the title say?
Groups currently partnering with Janssen.
And if you look down to the bottom under coalitions, what name is there?
The Pain Care Forum is one of them.
And on the bottom right corner of that document, does it say JANS?
It does.
Okay, so this is a document your company produced, correct?
I haven't seen this document, so I don't know who produced it.
Well, according to this document, Janssen viewed the Pain Care Forum as a group partnering with Janssen, correct?
I'm not sure. I can read the words. It says groups currently partnering with Janssen. I don't know what level of partnership Janssen had with the Pain Care Forum or any of these organizations.
Does Janssen not use words? They use words to have false meanings. And the word partnership is used here, isn't it?
Partnering is used here.
Okay, do you have any reason to believe that when Janssen used the word partnering, it was doing so falsely?
Well, again, I wasn't involved in producing this document, which you say is a Janssen document, so I can't tell you whoever produced this, how they perceive partnering.
It uses the word partnering, correct?
Partnering is used here.
With, use that word, correct?
Yes,
And the last word is,
Janssen.
and then it lists the Pain Care Forum, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And there on the advocacy strategy, which is at the bottom, it says, influence agencies that impact policy and quality to maintain or improve access. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, turn to page 5, please. There on page 5, under the heading Advocacy and Policy Focus, you list how you intended to use the Pain Care Forum to influence policy, correct?
Okay.
Bullet 2 refers to the Pain Care Forum, correct?
It does.
And what does it say the advocacy policy focus is for Janssen related to the Pain Care Forum?
It says collaborate with the Pain Care Forum on policy issues and common strategies with key decision makers, such as HHS, Surgeon General's Office, CDC, state and federal legislators, and regulators.
Did HHS did not regulate Pain Care Forum, did it? Did it?
I don't believe that HHS would have regulated the Pain Care Forum.
Yeah, in Janssen's own words, its advocacy focus with regards to the Pain Care Forum was to, quote, collaborate with the Pain Care Forum on policy issues and common strategies with key decision makers. And then it lists all of those entities, correct?
Yes.
Does that statement there say passively collaborate?
No, it says collaborate.
It does. Correct. It just says collaborate.
Yeah, it says collaborate.
Now turn to the preceding page, page 4, please. You sort of says advocacy focus on 3 priorities.
I see that.
Okay. There in the middle, it says IOM, Relieving Pain in America, a blueprint for transforming prevention, care, education, and research. You see that?
Yes.
And it asks the question, implications for states.
Yeah, I see that. Yes, implications for states.
What does it say after that?
Encourage governmental agencies, both state and federal, to respond to the IOM relieving pain recommendations. Engage the public about the findings and recommendations.
This document, Exhibit 7, is National Advocacy and Business Planning for Janssen's Pain franchise, correct?
Yes.
Sir, are you familiar with the FSMB, the Federation of State Medical Boards?
Yes, I am.
You're aware that the FSMB was a partner with J&J in the Pain Care Forum?
Are you asking if FSMB was a member of the Pain Care Forum?
You are aware that the FSMB was a partner in the Pain Care Forum with J&J?
I seem to recall from looking at the membership list that they were a member of the Pain Care Forum.
So the answer is yes.
That's my recollection.
Into Exhibit 9. This is a collection of pages from the Responsible Opioid Prescribing Book, a Physician's Guide. This is a book that was disseminated in the state of Oklahoma. Can you turn to the third page of Exhibit 9, please?
The title page?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It says Responsible Opioid Prescribing, a Physician's Guide. Do you see that?
Yes.
That book was written by who?
Scott Fishman?
The same Scott Fishman that was the speaker at the Pain Care Forum.
Yes.
Okay. This author lists other types of behavior that's indicative of addiction. Performing sex for money to buy drugs. You see that?
Yes.
Stealing drugs from others. You see that?
Yes, I do.
What about prostituting other people to get money to obtain drugs? You see that?
Yes, I do.
And then it lists prostituting others for drugs. And I think what that means is literally having someone perform sex where the exchange of compensation is the drugs themselves. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Is it behavior you would ever want someone you know or care about to engage in?
Again, I wouldn't want my family members to behave like this.
What about just anyone? A stranger on the street. Would you want a stranger on the street to engage in this type of behavior?
I'd be worried about my family first. I'm not going to worry about what other people do.
You want people that have to become addicted and have this type of behavior?
So what is your question again, Mr. Beckworth?
I said you don't worry about other people. Actually, let's go back. My question was, what about a stranger on the street? Would you want a stranger on the street to engage in this type of behavior? And your answer was, I would be worried about my family first. I'm not going to worry about what other people do. That's what you said, isn't it?
I believe I did say that.
At what point in time did the Pain Care Forum ever advocate for addiction prevention and treatment during the time J&J was a member of the Pain Care Forum?
I don't recall whether that was one of the issues or subjects that the Pain Care Forum addressed.
Have you ever been involved in Pain Care Forum?
Yes, I have.
Can you please tell us what involvement you had?
Couple things. I believe it was about 2013, I was added to the distribution list for the Pain Care Forum. And I was also identified as one of the J&J members of the Pain Care Forum.
Did you mean to suggest that you wouldn't care about strangers if they engaged in activities such as the ones Mr. Beckworth asked you about?
I didn't want to sound callous. I'd be concerned about anybody if they have a medical problem or an addiction problem.
Mr. Collins, do you care whether others who you don't know, who are complete strangers, engage in what Mr. Beckworth has called abhorrent behavior?
I guess I would have some sympathy for them as an individual, though as an individual I don't think I could do anything to really help them unless they were a friend.
Mr. Collins, there's been a lot of talk today about the PCF's involvement in opioids. Was Johnson & Johnson's interest in the Pain Care Forum or involvement with it related solely to opioids?
No, the Pain Care Forum is really much more than focused on opioids. It's focused on pain care management. And for J&J, we have a pain care portfolio which includes opioid and non-opioid treatments for pain, in particular acetaminophen, which is branded as Tylenol. The Pain Care Forum and we engaged through the Pain Care Forum on looking at the FDA. The FDA was seeking to consider recommendations for dosing of acetaminophen. So that was an area where we were interested. PCF members and Johnson & Johnson worked collaboratively.
I think the last sentence got cut off. I'll just read that one. I'll start at the beginning. It says, PCF members and Johnson & Johnson work collaboratively to examine those recommendations and discuss those issues. And that completes the video submission.
Okay.
I think you have that in the transcript we provided.
Thank you.
So that's the end of Mr. Collagen, and we would be ready to call our next witness.
All right.
Can we do so?
Yes.
Just
Schroeder?
we didn't raise it because of your written order on our continuing objections for motions in the entire collagen video was subject to question on lobbying activity.
Okay. Thank you for reassuring me.
Can we call our next witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
No, actually, can we approach? I was just handed some materials that apparently are going to be plaintiffs would like to play in connection with this witness, and I think we ought to approach and discuss it.
Sure. So before we call the witness, come on up, counsel.
Thank you for being here, Tanya. Where were you born?
Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
We'll spend some time here now going through your background a little bit and then move to some other issues. So, when you were born, were your parents married?
Yes.
And can you tell the court a little bit about your childhood?
It's all right. No problem.
These iPads on my team, it's just too much.
Repeat your question.
Your parents were married when you were born?
Yes, my parents were married.
And at some point, did your parents get divorced?
Yeah, they did. So,
Can you tell the court a little bit about what happened with your biological father?
yeah. So, typical family. Family, obviously, that had a child, and it was from what I remember when I was a little girl, I had a good childhood. Unfortunately, my father was an addict. My father was an alcoholic. My father did have issues with opiates. My parents got divorced when I was roughly 6. I think they separated when I was 5, actually got divorced when I was 7. I remember a lot about my childhood. Obviously, I had, shared visitation. I was at my dad's house a lot. I was at my dad's house a lot when I was younger. I remember some absolutely horrific times in which, unfortunately, my father was either intoxicated or under, the use of opiates and didn't make the best choices, which obviously put me at risk as a child.
And Tanya, we'll come back to your biological father in a minute, but let me just ask you this question. Can you tell the court, I know it's been a while, you're very young, you look very young, but it's been a while since you were that age. What was it like growing up in a household where, from 5, 6 years old, you had a dad who was addicted to drugs?
I think it was anxiety driven. I think you really didn't know what to expect, and that was really hard. You didn't have the typical, obviously, mom and dad that your other friends had. It was hard to bring people over to spend the night because you didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah.
It was tough?
It was tough.
So after your parents got divorced, your mother remarried?
She did remarry.
And is it true that your stepfather also ultimately became an addict?
He did.
Can you tell the court a little bit about that experience?
And, became addicted to pain pills, and unfortunately, that's how life was, and that continued for quite some time until my mom ended up divorcing him, which was actually separate, I think, roughly in the year 2001, divorced in 2002. My mom did remarry an unbelievable man who is, I consider, my father today, and they have been married since 2003.
And your stepfather, the first time, when he was going through addiction, you were still in the house?
I was.
And how was that for you, going from one situation to the next?
2 totally different situations, honestly. I had one biological father who was not a functioning addict, and I had a second stepfather who was a functioning addict. And so, but in the end, neither of those were obviously healthy relationships.
Yeah. And was that difficult I guess you were an adolescent at that time. How was it you were able to process and deal with those situations?
It's interesting because I think I had more concern about my biological father, just for the simple fact that he couldn't handle it, compared to my stepfather. So I think I was so engulfed in, what was happening with my biological father, if he was alive, if he was okay. Yeah. That was really hard.
So you've recently had some issues with your father and addiction, is that right?
That's correct.
And I don't want to pry too much in your personal life, but I know that here in the last week you've been dealing with some of this addiction that's resurfaced, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
To the extent you're comfortable with it, can you talk to the court a little bit about trying to get your dad help here? I think you told me it started around Father's Day.
Yeah, it started around Father's Day, and I think what's really sad is it's something he's been dealing with for the past 25 years. Yeah. Probably longer. And it's hard to find help. It's very hard to find help unless you have the monetary means to truly invest in recovery. And it's sad. And I know he's not the only one. I know this isn't an isolated case.
So your dad came to you, I think, here in the last week, and I know you tried to get him some help, and you mentioned to me that one of the groups you looked at was the Storm Recovery Center here.
Storm Recovery Center, Meredith Schaefer and her husband George, who are unbelievable individuals, truly dedicated to addiction recovery in Oklahoma.
And ultimately, and I think George Schultz, or George Schaefer, is someone who had suffered from addiction as well, right?
Correct.
That's pulled out of that.
In complete recovery and mentoring to others.
Okay. So you turned to them to try to get help for your dad.
Mm-hmm.
You need to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And you know, again, I don't want to get too in the weeds about this, but ultimately, were you able to get him into the treatment this week that you've been working on all week?
Unfortunately, he denied help.
Okay. So we're going to kind of go back to your background in high school, but can you just talk to the court? We've had several witnesses in this case that we've talked to about the power of addiction, and you've experienced that personally with two parents. Can you talk to the court about what you've seen there and how it worked in your life?
Addiction is evil. It is so prevalent in every aspect of life. It does not discriminate. I think that's the very key, that it does not discriminate. It's something obviously that I dealt with and have dealt with in my entire life, but it's also something that I can tell you that having to deal with it has made me probably a stronger person than I could ever imagine being. And that's because I had an amazing mom who stood beside me, who was willing to invest in me, who was willing to, you know, allow me to do things that would benefit, you know, my greater good and my well-being. And she never held me back, but at the same time, she never let me get away with much either.
Well, let's turn to that. It's a positive turn in your life. I was going to ask you, with a mom at home and the divorces and the addiction, how did you get out of that situation? You ultimately, I know we'll talk a minute about graduating high school, but what did you do in your life to try to take a positive turn?
You know, I'm not exactly sure it was popular, and I mean, you know what I mean by that. It's you know, you have this group of friends, you have this crowd, right? And if everyone is partaking in something, which probably isn't in the best, you know, choice of the group, I was the one that, you know, would say no. I was the one that wasn't invited to the party after that. I was the one that, you know, it was just not the popular thing to do, but in the end I knew it was the right thing to do. I saw firsthand how addiction plagued my family, and I didn't want to be that next generation, to be very honest with you.
I think you told me one time that you believed you had a path to choose, either the addiction route or the other route.
We all have a path to choose.
And you
Absolutely,
chose.
the higher road, so to speak, which is not always easy to do.
Right.
Because sometimes it kills friendships, sometimes it, you know, sometimes it's just not fun, but it is what it is, and it's the right thing to do at the right time.
So as you're growing up in this household, your mom's trying to help you and you're dealing with these situations. You were in high school. Where'd you go to high school?
Putman City North.
Did you graduate?
I sure did, class of 2000.
So when you were in high school, you weren't just an ordinary student. You went and did some other things, right?
I went and did some other things, yeah.
Tell the court about what you did.
Well, they have an amazing program at all the high schools now in which you are able to actually go forward to a technology center, whether it's Francis Tuttle or Metro Tech, and you're able to do college prep classes and actually obtain college credit while you're still in high school, which was a really big thing. In that situation, I was like, why not? I loved medicine, loved the human body. I think it's an unbelievable, just an unbelievable being, and how, you know, from a molecular standpoint, from a cellular standpoint, how it heals, you know, how disease, you know, sometimes can take over the body, how the organs work, all of it was just fascinating. So with that, I obtained my AUA, which is Advanced Unlicensed Assistant, my Certified Nursing Assistant, and my Medical Assistant, which in my thought were just platforms to propel me to a higher level of career.
And so we'll get to your college part of your life in a minute, but you were ultimately able to use some of those things while you were in college, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Had to work my way through college.
Okay, so you graduated college, you told me in May. I'm not going to use the year. Is it true you got married just a few short weeks later?
A few short weeks later, I graduated, I think it was May 19th, and got married on June the 10th.
Who'd you marry?
Travis Ratcliffe.
And are you still married today?
To this very day.
So we'll just put it this, you've been married more than 10 years?
19 years on June the 10th.
Okay, perfect. Now, do you and Travis have a family?
You could say that. We've got quite a big family, actually.
How big is your family, Tanya?
And we have 13 children, and you want me to go into the pets or not? Just 13 kids, and obviously the two of us.
Okay, so how many are your biological children?
We have two born from my body, which are our biological children, and we have 13 born from my heart, or our heart, from foster care and adoption.
And their ages range from what to what?
1 to 14.
Okay. Tanya, you've told me one time you had a little saying about your baker's dozen. How does that go?
Well, you got to be careful what you pray for, I think is what I said, and because you never know how many children will enter your world. And I said, we were 1 and done, 2 were through, 3 for me, 4 no more, 5 and still alive, 6 in the mix, 7 sent from heaven, 8 feeling great, 9 doing fine, 10 is the end. But a family isn't a family unless you have a baker's dozen.
I was watching Miss Tanya try to type that because to get through 13 kids, you got to talk pretty fast. We'll come back to your children here in a minute, but did you ever think you'd have that many kids?
Never.
And I want to make a kind of an agreement with you today. We're going to talk about some difficult things with some of your children. And I have 2 daughters. They would not like me calling them an it or not using their name. But today we'll just try to refer to some of these as a child or your child and leave the gender and names out if that's okay.
Yeah.
If I slip,
Yes.
I apologize, but we'll just do it that way. Let's go back to you're married to Travis in June. You ended up going to college. Where did you start college?
Started at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City for my 2-year degree, associates.
Okay. And did you ultimately transfer?
I did to University of Central Oklahoma for my bachelor's.
What did you study there? What did you get a bachelor's in?
My bachelor's was in applied science and general education, and my master's was in adult education, professional health occupations.
Okay. Were you wanting to go to medical school?
I would have loved to have gone to medical school.
Okay. And we talked a little bit earlier about your vocational extra things you did in high school. Did you utilize those when you were in college? You said you worked through school?
Yes, I worked through school, started in urology, then transferred over to OBGYN, and then, multiple other pieces, and then ended up where I felt like my true executive career really began, which was at Integris Health.
Okay, just real quick, you mentioned a master's. What is adult education professional?
Adult education, basically, it would give me the opportunity to teach classes to adults that are in professional health occupations, maybe being able to put on courses at a hospital to help teach physicians, whether it's certain, clinical courses or maybe bedside manner, very certain things.
Now, you mentioned, and we'll just transition to that, at some point you went to work for Integris, and how did you start out there?
So I started out in actually home health care, was actually a sales and marketing position in which I was able to basically recruit individuals or patients that needed home health care services to help them decrease the possibility of rehospitalization or allow them to discharge from the hospital sooner with services to a home setting.
And at some point, did you end up getting asked to move to what's called a NICU?
I was asked to start a program in the NICU, that is correct, which is the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit.
Okay. And can you tell the court a little bit about that transition and how you felt about it?
Yeah. I wasn't happy. I was terrified, to be very honest with you. I'd never been in the NICU. Obviously, I didn't have any children at that time. I wasn't sure what happened there. I knew that babies were very sick there, and I wasn't real excited about doing it, and in the end, it was a part of my job description, so I said I would go ahead and do it, and basically I was in charge of identifying children or infants in the NICU that would qualify for Synagis, and Synagis is a prophylaxis injection given to premature infants for the prevention of severe RSV disease. RSV for me and you is the common cold, but it can actually be deadly to a premature infant whose lung development isn't at full capacity.
So Tanya, when you were working there in the NICU, did you start seeing or did you come across children that had difficulty from having been exposed to opioids or other drugs?
Many.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just give the court a picture of what you were seeing.
Infants that, some as small as your hand, tiny, others that were, fuller size or full size or term babies. Some of them were so much worse off than others. It just depended on the severity of what their exposure level was.
And was that a challenging environment there in that situation?
One of the hardest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. Did it change you?
Absolutely, it changed me.
Okay, so we'll come back to that here in a minute. At some point, you and Travis decided to have a child of your own?
We did.
And tell the court, we don't have to go into his or her name, but you had a child sometime in 2005, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a beautiful baby that ended up actually in the NICU due to a persistent pulmonary hypertension and some osteo or orthopedic issues. And I thank God that I was put in the NICU before, because I'm not exactly sure what I would have done if I would have had to gone in there just blind. It's a very scary place, and you just never know what to expect.
So Tanya, at some point after you had this child and you and Travis were starting your own family, you had an opportunity to learn about the foster parent system here in Oklahoma, right?
I did.
Can you tell the court about your first experience with that and what happened?
Yeah, it was pretty simple. Obviously, I kind of felt like I was a seasoned, professional of the NICU. I knew what happened there. I saw the babies that were in the NICU. I will never forget, I was walking out of the NICU. There was a police officer coming in, and he had an empty car seat, and I said, "Hey, are you taking home a baby?" And he said, "I wish I was taking one home." He goes, "I'm actually taking one to the nearby shelter." And I was like, "A shelter?" I'm like, "What do you mean a shelter?" I was like a shelter, like a place? I mean, do they take babies here? I was totally oblivious to the foster care crisis in Oklahoma, nor did I even understand what a children's shelter was, and then found out that truly there were infants that were taken out of that hospital that didn't have a home or a family. I mean, they were going to, just a building that had multiple cribs in which these children resided because they didn't have enough foster families to take them home.
And so when this officer was talking to you about this, did he tell you what you had to do to go get in line to maybe help?
I said, "I'll take him home." And I remember he smiled at me. He goes, "It's not that easy." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I'm a mom." I said, I can help." And he goes, "Well, you have to fill out all this paperwork." So, I just hop on down to my office and print off those 26 pages without asking permission, of course, of my husband. Fill them out, and then tell him that night that you will never believe what happened today, and you will never believe what I saw. And we have the ability, truly, to be the home for a child that doesn't have a home. And I want you to consider that.
So you went and signed the paperwork without telling your husband?
The jury's out on that one.
Tanya, I don't want to give your real age, but you were pretty young. Were you in your early 20s when this was happening?
Yeah, I guess I was. It was a long time ago.
So let me ask you this. I've got 2 kids. What in the world were you thinking, walking down and signing up for this great unknown of becoming a foster parent when you had a young child at home?
I guess it was the thought of that child not having a home. The thought of how many others that happens to that I didn't know about. That did Oklahoma know about this? Is there any other family that's going to be willing to step up? I mean, I truly felt I felt called. And my husband thought I was crazy. I mean, he looked at me, he was like, what? He's like, Tanya, come on. He said, what life, world-changing mission are you on? And I said, if you would have seen and if you would have heard what I saw and what I heard today, I said, this is happening. This is real. I said, this is an epidemic. And I said, if we can be one family making a difference, I said, why not? I said, there's one bedroom that we have that doesn't have a baby in it. Why not?
And so you filled out the paperwork?
Filled out the paperwork.
And did you ultimately have the opportunity to have your first foster child?
We did.
Can you tell the court about that experience?
The very first baby that we had was an infant, actually, that had already, I guess, withdrawn at this point. It was an opiate baby, and we received that baby and had it for, I guess it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was like 15 days. It was an ugly situation. The child had multiple siblings. In the end, it ended up going to a family member, but I'll never forget that the mom overdosed and died.
So you mentioned having this child for 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any help? I mean, did you have clothes and diapers and things like that?
No, that baby was dropped off with a car seat, a Walmart bag, and a can of formula.
And
it had a onesie from the hospital. I mean, it was just crazy.
How did you know what to do?
Well, I was a mom, so what any good mom would do is run to Target and start just get the basics, diapers, some other clothes, a pacifier, anything that you can imagine doing.
Tanya, this child wasn't a normal child, though, was it? The child had been exposed to drugs?
Yeah, unbeknownst to us, and please understand that this was our first rodeo, right? We didn't know what we were doing. We had no clue. We were just trying to do what we could for this little child that, needed a home. And so that's what we did, and that's what we were called to do.
What was it like as a young couple dealing with or handling infant for the first time that had been exposed to drugs through the mother and came into the world that way? What was that like for you?
It was terrifying. Are we going to break it? What do we do? I mean, we were not seasoned, to do that. I mean, truly it's not what we signed up for when we go back and think about it, but we knew it was what we had to do.
Did the child act differently, scream? Was it?
If I remember correctly, that child was fussier than normal, but it wasn't anything like the extent of my other children.
Okay. And so this first attempt at fostering, you said 15 days. Were you able to keep the child, or did you have to let it go?
So the child was actually, it was a kinship, and it went to kinship foster care. And again, our first rodeo, we didn't know what to expect. And so we got the phone call that we were losing the baby and that they had found an additional placement. And 15 days may not sound like a long time, but it was enough for us to fall in love, like with any mom. And we were, and we wanted the very best for that child. And if it was for that child to go with family, that's what it was. But I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it was easy, because it was one of the hardest things that we've ever done. And I remember we were at Chick-fil-A, and we were drowning our sorrows in waffle fries, and we just didn't know what to do. And I remember looking at my husband, and I was like, we're not cut out for this. Like, we can make our own babies. That's what we're gonna do. I mean, this is not what we signed up for. And I'll never forget that Deb Shropshire, who is a very, very big part of DHS, actually coordinated and runs the Fostering Hope Clinic that actually serves at-risk Oklahoma foster children for medical care. She actually was there with her husband and her child, and actually came up to me, and we had seen each other previously in very many different venues and around at Panera Bread before we went to church. And she came over and she goes, I didn't know you had a baby. And I said, well, I didn't have it. And I said, this is a baby that's in foster care. And I said, unfortunately, we're losing this baby tomorrow morning. And I said, I'm sick. And of course I just, was explaining to her all of what was taking place and the woes and over. And she goes, "You don't know what I do you?" And I was like, "No." And she goes, "I actually work for DHS." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she goes, "Tanya," she goes, "this isn't your last ride." She said, "The love that you gave this baby over the last 15 days is more love than that baby could have ever expected to get." And she said, "Though this is goodbye," she said, "you'll keep the ones you're supposed to keep." And she said, "You'll invest in the ones that you don't." She said, "So it's not about you." She said, that you have more good to do.
Did that change your life, that meeting?
Yeah, I was humbled really quick.
You said something a minute ago about being careful what you prayed for, but sometimes people come into your life at just the right time, don't they?
That was an answer to prayer. Because if that meeting hadn't have taken place, I wouldn't be the mom to as many kids as I am today.
So you had this great experience, but was a challenge, and it's part of the learning curve for you. So you see Deb, and you have this talk. And so what did you do after she had these words of encouragement for you?
What any normal person would do, go home and create a marketing plan, right?
What do you mean?
Go big or go home. I mean, I was like, that's it. You know what? There are more kids that need a home, and we are that family, and this is what we're going to do. So it was get the word out that we have a room open. We can take a child or multiple children, and how do we do this? Well, you put together a PowerPoint presentation.
You
right?
put together a PowerPoint.
I did. It's funny, and I laugh about it now when I look back, but I mean, just... this is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we can do. Do you have a baby that needs us? And that's what we wanted DHS to know.
And so how did you use that? What did you do to try to get your...
Well, anyone that would listen to me, of course, I was on the phone with, just trying to, just let everyone know and making phone calls, and ended up on the phone with, I was trying to get a hold of my worker, I was unaware that my worker had changed, and I got on the phone with this lady, and I'm just telling her all about who we are and what we do, and she's halfway listening. And I had already emailed her, my presentation, so to speak, and I was like, "Look, what do you need from me? Is this interesting to you? Do you have a baby that needs a home?" And she was like, "Yeah, I have a baby." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "It's at OU right now. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Well, yes." And so, like, just like that, we're foster parents again.
So we're going to talk about your second foster child, which, but before that, can you tell the court, I know there's been a lot, how many children have you and Travis had in your custody as foster parents?
So the numbers between 20 and 25, it's funny, you got to think of all the overnight placements that come that just need a home, but roughly 20 to 25 kids. We've been doing this for almost 12 years.
Wow. So you mentioned that your PowerPoint, your aggression, I would call it, worked.
Aggression.
I guess you took your college training to heart and took a business approach to this, but you ultimately were given a second child, and you said it was at the OU Medical Center.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell the court about that?
Oh, it was a sweet baby that needed a home, and ask and you shall receive, because we got that baby, and I mean, it was deja vu all over again. And so this sweet baby arrived at our home, and again, car seat, limited supplies, but I kind of planned ahead, right? So you get the basics that you need beforehand to make sure that you can provide that baby with whatever that baby needs. This baby was also a baby that had been exposed to opiates. That was obviously in all the material. So we thought, okay, all right, this here we are. And so that was number 2.
We're going to come back and talk about number 2 in just a minute, and talk about some of the issues that you and your family faced with respect to that exposure. But that wasn't the only one that came your way, right?
No.
So
No.
can you tell the court what happened just a few weeks later?
A few weeks later, I was actually at Integris Baptist Medical Center. I was in the NICU. And there was a baby screaming. And I will never forget that gut-wrenching sound of his scream. And I was in there doing some paperwork for some Synagis injections. And I just was looking over at these nurses like, I mean, can I do something? You know, you want me to hold? I mean, what can I do? Anything. I said, can I hold it? And they were like, yeah, you can hold it. So I picked up this little baby, and I'll never forget, like, I met its eyes, and I was like, hi, what are you doing? You're making all this noise. Why are you being so loud? And it was interesting that that baby wanted to be held. But there was so much more to that baby's story than I could ever imagine. And that baby was a baby that was severely exposed, and that baby was withdrawing, and it was one of the hardest things that I'd ever seen, because of course my day had to go on. So when I had to put that baby down, and because of that, of course, that baby started crying again. And I'll never forget, I left the NICU crying, thinking, I mean, what do I do? So I ended up back in the regular nursery a short time after this, and sure enough, that little baby was still there. And I thought, what are you doing here? You should be in a home. And that baby had unfortunately been abandoned. And I'll never forget, I called DHS and said, okay, what's going on here? You know, this baby should be in a home. This baby's eating up length of stay days. I was trying to make it more of a professional piece. And I said, I'll do you a favor. I can take this baby home, but only for the weekend. And what was so funny is that, you know, weekend placement turns into my soon-to-be 12-year-old today.
And you and that child came across one another because you were working where?
Because I was working in the NICU.
The same one that
Same place I didn't want to be in.
That somebody put you there.
Somebody put me there.
And you took your firstborn child there too.
Correct.
So what happened? Did you leave that child there?
That child came home with me, actually. Well, I think it was actually DHS came and they did a discharge, and that child was actually brought to my home. And that child had a laundry list of issues.
Related.
Still to this day does.
We'll come back to that as well. You ultimately had your first adoption day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell? You need to say yes.
Yes.
Just so Porter can get it down. But can you tell the court about that adoption day? It was a little unusual. What happened the day that you adopted your first adopted child?
Well, my first adopted child ended up in 2 adoptions that day, because what was beautiful about it is that the baby that came to me in the beginning, my first son, in foster care became my adopted son, and then my next child that came into foster care, the one from the NICU, became my adopted son. So they were my twin brothers, different mothers, even though they were 1 month and 1 day apart. But the 2 judges on that case, Judge Stewart and Judge Alcorn, actually came to the same courtroom, and we were able to make their gotcha day on the same day.
Well, I'm not going to use a date, but same day, right?
Same day.
And that wasn't your last tie to the family for your first adopted child, right? You ended up having something else happen with respect to that child. What was it?
I ended up having another baby was born. And that was the brother of one of my adopted children. Same song, different verse. Addiction was still plaguing that family. And that child was born positive.
And so
again.
Same family.
Same family.
And so what did you and Travis decide to do, or what happened?
Did we really have, did we have a choice? Yes. Did we know the choice that we were supposed to make? Absolutely. because those babies were supposed to be together. Those brothers were supposed to be together.
So you adopted that child too?
We did.
So you did your baker's dozen a minute ago. You've ultimately adopted 8 children?
8, correct.
You have 2 that were biologically yours?
Correct.
You currently are taking care of 3 foster children?
3 in foster care, correct.
So I was trying to do the math there. So far it sounds to me like 3 of those children were exposed to opiates through the mother.
Correct.
And they came into the world that way.
Correct.
You also have a total of 6 children that were exposed to some type of substance there, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, we're going to come to the hard part here in a minute, but let's talk about, it's all positive, but let's talk about the real positive stuff. How do you and Travis and 13 kids get from one place to the next? What's life like at your house?
Life is beautiful chaos. We're different. You know, everywhere we go, are they all yours? I'm like, every one of them. I'm like, you know it. And, you know, sometimes I ask them, I'm like, do you babysit? Are you wanting to know because you're looking for employment? Because, you know, I could hook you up. So we always kind of joke around in that situation when people are asking, are they all yours? You know, we drive a big van. We, you know, have a big grocery bill. We have a big life, and I don't think we'd have it any other way.
So do you and your husband ever get to go on a date? I mean, it's hard for me to do that with 2 kids. How do you do it with 13?
I'm sorry, what's a date?
Yeah.
No. You know, lunch is probably king for us because normally everyone has a place to call theirs during the day. So those lunch dates can, you know, those are few and far between, but, you know, sometimes we're able to get that on the book.
I'm just curious. I'm totally curious on this one. Can you get one person to babysit 13 kids?
I can, actually, yes. Yeah, I can. Now, it cost me a pretty penny, so in that situation, we're like going through the McDonald's drive-thru, but yeah, you can find them.
Mine babysits Mr. Pate's kids from time to time, and 2 is all she can handle, so I don't know how that's going. You just said something about gotcha days. Mm-hmm. I've never heard that term until I met you. Can you tell the court what that is and why you said it?
So gotcha days are really important in our family just because every time that you adopt a child, that's their gotcha day. So in our family, a gotcha day is the day of their adoption, and that child then, they get to pick wherever they want to eat, and they get a cake, and then we retell the story of their adoption and why they're such a special part of our family and how our family wouldn't be what our family is without them.
So you don't really do birthdays. It's kind of hard to keep up, huh?
We do birthdays too, but you know, it's kind of like their second birthday in a way.
Okay, so I told you we would talk about it's like I said, it's all great. It's amazing to me, but let's talk about, you mentioned several times with these children that there's some issues that happen. If you could tell the court when you get a child in your care who's born with neonatal abstinence syndrome or just problems related to exposure, what are those first 5 to 10 days like?
They're hell on earth, and that is, that's being polite about it. What happens to those babies is tragic, and it's nothing that you as a human being can do anything about except for hold them, love them, feed them, try in some way, form, or fashion to limit, you know, how comfortable they are or how comfortable they are not. It's terrifying as you're holding them and these babies are shaking in your arms. They're shaking to the point where it's uncontrollable. There's no, you know, there's no helpline. There's no nurse standing by you. It's hard. It's really hard. You're exhausted. You feel like you're failing as a mom. You're playing you're playing almost a relief game with your spouse as far as who's going to take the next step, who's going to take the next shift. It's hard. It's really hard.
Now, you mentioned shaking. What are you talking about there?
On the babies that I had in my care that were withdrawing from drugs would shake. And I mean, it's not just like a quiver, it's their body would just shake and they would just scream uncontrollably. Uncontrollably to a point where you questioned, do I go to the emergency room? Is there something wrong with this baby that I don't know about? You just started questioning yourself as a parent. Is this normal? Is it not normal? And what's sad is the more babies that came into our care, the more normal that got. And that's what I think was more tragic about it, is that as those babies just sat there and shook, you just knew that it would get better as time went on.
So Tanya, you've talked about it. Words don't really describe what this is like, do they?
Not at all.
You have to see it with your own eyes.
To experience it, to be there in that same room, to hold that child, yeah, if you can.
Now, you and I have looked at a video that we found online with a baby that was exposed and born with, as far as we know, neonatal abstinence syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we're not putting blame on anybody for how that baby came to be that way, but do you believe, having seen that video, it's a fair and accurate depiction of what a neonatal abstinence child does when these tremors and shakes that you've described, having been in NICU and having held these children in your own arms? Is it a fair depiction?
It is fair. It's as close as you can get without being in the same room and holding that child.
And we're going to continue this conversation about the difficulties these children face and the parents dealing with them face. Do you feel like it would help you assist the court in this conversation if we were to show that picture and the court can see what you're describing?
Yes.
Your Honor, this is the video we'd offered as a court's exhibit. We'd like to play it at this time. It's publicly available. There's no privacy issues with it, and I frankly think you have to see what's depicted to understand what Mrs. Rack was talking about.
Your Honor, I would reiterate the objections that we made at sidebar with respect to this video, and for all of those reasons, ask that it's not admissible and not appropriate to be placed.
Your Honor, like I said, I think we're asking the court to make some very heavy decisions in this case, and certainly what happens with addiction to these babies and the abandonment that results due to the overdose problem we have in this state is a big part of it. And having been through this myself in this case, unless you've been there and seen it, I don't think you can understand what's really going on. And she's laid a very proper predicate that, as someone with training in the NICU who has these babies herself, that this is an accurate depiction.
Overrule the defendant's objection. I'll allow for the video to be shown. I'll mark it as Court's Exhibit 88. It won't be admitted to the evidence, but I'll allow it to be shown as a court exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Medina, if you'll play this, and Tanya, it's a short 30 seconds. I'll ask you some questions about it. Now, Tanya, can you put that into words? Is that what it's like?
That's what it's like.
Now, when
And is it 24/7? No. Is it different for every baby? Absolutely. Is it that terrifying? Yes.
You mentioned to me when we watched that together that there was something missing. It was the sound, right?
Yeah.
You've had babies crying around you your whole adult life.
Yeah.
Is it different with?
Totally different. Totally different when you feel so helpless that you cannot do anything for that child except for hold it. I mean, it's you were at a point to where you don't know what to do, and there's nothing to do except for be there for that child. Or in the event that you lay that child down and then that child stops crying, and you were so anxiety stricken that you run in to make sure the child's still breathing. The child was breathing, but the child was just sleeping, and then the child starts screaming again. I mean, there's no win to that. There's not a book, there's not a video that shows you what you can do to stop it, because you can't. It's on that child's body and that child's metabolism when that child will stop withdrawing.
So Tanya, you and I looked at something that's a court's exhibit in this case about where we are just with sooner care in the state on neonatal absence. And can you put that back up? 56. Your Honor, this is court's exhibit 56. And I showed you this graph of the increase in children born with neonatal abstinence syndrome. And I know I've told you this is just those that are on sooner care. You started experiencing this in your life in the 2005, 2006 range, right?
Correct.
And you see just from that graph the number of babies born this way here in Oklahoma, it's increased.
Dramatically.
As a mother who deals with that, how does that make you feel?
Angry and sad, slightly helpless, because how many more can we take? How many more families are going to step up and step out of their comfort zone and take a child like that? What training is available for those parents that are going to sit there and watch that baby shake and cry and just to survive? So it's frustrating.
So you've talked about what this first few weeks is like. Walk us through the progression of a child, your child, that's born. You said, particularly with one of them, that's been really tough. What are those first 3 to 4 years like?
I think that so many people believe that exposure and addiction with these children ends after withdrawal. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. My children are amazing children. And I believe that I'm a good mom. But there are days that are so hard that you question, are you doing the right thing? And that's a really hard place to be in when you don't think that you're a good mom, but you know that this child was put with you for a reason. My children are loved. My children are adored. My children have an unbelievable support system behind them. I seek out the best of the best for my children all the time. I try to put the right people in the right places to make sure that they get everything they need from a health standpoint, from an education standpoint. And there are days that that's just not enough. And when I say it's not enough, it's these fits of rage. It is academic delays. It is their body not functioning due to the fact that addiction affected their body and some of the organs in their body. There are days in which we can play catch and we can go out as a family and live life like a normal family would, as typical as a family with 13 children could, right? But there are good days and there are bad days. And that is what is so difficult when it comes to exposed children and what's taking place in their life and how addiction is still affecting them down the line. And I think what's more frightening for me as a mom is what does the future hold? And that is terrifying. My child didn't ask to be born an addict, but that's what happened to my child. And so I question, does that make him more susceptible? Are there things that I should do differently to keep him safe without enabling him, without being that, overly diligent helicopter mom? You question everything that you're doing. And I think a lot of parents in this situation do.
You mentioned you don't know how they're going to turn out. Your oldest adopted child is how old?
Will be 12 in June.
And so you don't know yet what's going to happen, right? You don't know despite what you've done, you don't know what the biological and mental impact of this has all been.
I know it's not going to be good. I know that it could be better if it wasn't for that exposure. Would it have been perfect? No one's life is. But I guarantee you I wouldn't have the trials that I face, that he faces, that she faces, if it wasn't for that exposure piece.
Having been through this and raised these children and seen it with your own eyes, plus the ones that you've seen that you can't help, do you think that when a child comes into the world this way, are they starting with a level playing field?
Not in the least. Not in the least.
And what happens to them when somebody like you's not there willing to take them?
That's probably why I have 13. Because there aren't enough families to aid in the crisis of the children in Oklahoma that need a home. And that's the truth.
I think we have a graph on that. Just hold on a second, Mr. Medina. We asked you to look at some data we have. I know you're not an expert in this, but you have looked and you know quite a bit about the DHS system here, right?
Yes.
And you told me that we have a shortage of homes and an overabundance of children in need, right?
We do.
And you asked me to look at the data and see what it was showing today.
I did.
And we looked at that together.
We did.
And I told you we could make a graph out of it, right?
I said that would be a beautiful example to show how many more children were coming into foster care in the height of this opioid crisis.
And we did make a graph. Do you believe it would be helpful to show that and depict it to the court?
Very helpful.
At this time, we'd offer Court's Exhibit 89.
Your Honor, I haven't seen this exhibit. Can I see it? And it seems there's maybe a lack of foundation as to what the data is, where it comes from, just based on what was said.
I'm sorry, I thought that was on the thumb drive you gave. We can show it to you real quick if you just step back here with Mr. Medina. I apologize. Your Honor, we'd ask that we show this as times a court exhibit. It's just based on the data of the percentage increase annually of kids coming into this system.
Your Honor, I just looked at the graphic. There's no reference to any data, no reference to a source, no idea who put the data together, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. I anticipate there may be a witness who can do this for them, who actually is familiar with the data and understands the basis for it. But until that happens, Your Honor, we ask not be admitted or shown until they can lay that kind of foundation for it. We know where it comes from and what it is, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I think it's based on DHS data. It's a simple graph that shows the percentages that we're dealing with. We'd offer it as a court's exhibit.
Can I see it?
Sure. I'll have to show you on Mr. Duck's phone, but I'll show you the underlying data.
And again, Your Honor, I anticipate there will have other witnesses who may be able to lay the proper predicate for it.
This data has been provided to the defendants. That's the underlying data.
What is it? The underlying data. I'd like to see it.
Where's the source of the data?
That's the information where that data comes from. My understanding is that they do have an expert who has identified and looked at some data. I don't know if they're an expert or not, but that would be the proper way to introduce this kind of data to the board.
Seems like an end run around calling the expert. I'm sorry. Seems like an end run around calling the expert to get the calculations.
It's just simply a person about what she's doing.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You certainly can ask Ms. Radcliffe about her knowledge of data, but I'm not going to enter it.
I would ask that they not really just articulate the content of that data and not answer the same problem. So she has any separate knowledge as opposed to
I'll sustain the objection to a leading question about the data.
Tanya, we had a little production snafu there on our graph. So just big picture, you deal with this. What do you know about whether children that are, I think we use a term called removal, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's going on with removals here in the state over the last decade?
You know, we became foster parents in 2006, and since then, you know, you have had an increase of the total number of children in care almost every single year. You know, look forward, you know, from 2006 to 2011, the Pinnacle Plan that had to be implemented due to, you know, sometimes even maltreatment in care. I mean, you had an influx of children in care. You had not enough families in the state of Oklahoma to be able to care for the number of children in care. You had these children going to shelters and other places because there was no other home for them to go to. So it's real. I mean, it's, you know, you're sitting here in crisis mode because you have children being removed, sitting in hospitals because they don't have a family who's able to take that child with them.
And has that gone up?
It has gone up.
Dramatically or just a little?
I think we went from 8,000 children in care to up to 10, 11,000 children in care. And that was from 2000, I think I remember that number in 2008, we were sitting at 8,000. I think in 2011, 2010, we went up to 10 or 11,000. So the number of children in care was skyrocketing. Now, since we were able to have, you know, DHS has done their part when it comes to creating, you know, agencies such as Oklahoma Fosters to recruit additional foster parents in the state of Oklahoma. Their first year in existence, over 1,000 foster families were identified and trained. So they're doing as much as they can do to find families to serve the needs of these children.
You know quite a bit about that, don't you?
I know enough. More than I want to know.
So, you know, some of the things you've talked about are what it's like to care for a child that's been exposed or with NAS, but there's also an issue of abandonment, right?
There is.
So you have children and you deal with children in your job, we'll talk about in a minute, who may have not been NAS children, but they still are abandoned because of what's happened to their mother, father, or both.
Addiction and poverty plague our foster care system. And there are parents who, in some instances, know that that's probably the best outcome for their child, is for their child to be left. You have some that are in the middle of addiction that are willing to, in some instances, relinquish their rights because they know they have no place and no business raising a child when the parent is in the condition that they're in.
Well, let's think about that for a second. As a parent, I can tell you, you probably feel the same thing. Is there anything more powerful in your life than the bond between you and a child?
No.
But for an addict, there's something more powerful than the bond between a father and a daughter.
In 2018, I stood in the Logan County Courthouse, And I was adopting 3 children with my husband. And who stood beside me was the birth mother of those 3 children. And she stood there as those children changed their names and changed in an instant their life. And I can't imagine how hard that was for her, but it showed a sign of unity between 2 mothers that loved those children more than anything in that world. And there were tears that fell that day in that courtroom because I knew she was losing something more precious to her than I could ever imagine. And at the same time, there were tears falling from her because she knew that her babies were going to be taken care of. But that right there is the perfect story of what addiction and poverty can do.
So Tanya, who taught you or who teaches someone in your shoes? You know, DHS puts the child in your care and that's their job. Who prepares you for this?
Nothing can prepare you. Nothing. You know, there's no story, there's no foster care placement that replicates the next. You are going to be dealing with so many different situations, so many different stories, so many different factors. And I think in the end, all you can do is love. And that is what DHS teaches you to do, is love.
And
I was unbelievably fortunate to have a healthcare, organization behind me with gifted physicians that were there every step of the way in our foster care journey. But not every foster parent has that gift.
And when you take a child on, will the state or anyone help provide any funding, or are you raising that child all on your own?
You are raising that child with a subsidy from the state.
Is it enough?
It's normally, I think, $15 to $20 a day, just depending on the needs of that child. It's all depending upon age.
And when you're dealing with children like yours that have had these issues, is there a lot of extra expense and counseling and things like that come into play?
There is added expense, and I think when you're raising these children, I think you can do it status quo, and I think you can do it with excellence in mind. And so obviously with excellence in mind, that is going to be extra money out of your pocket. And I think every foster parent is different, and every foster parent, is given a road in which their journey, and that's the road that they're on, and some can do more than others.
So Tanya, we'll kind of wrap up here in just a minute. Your journey through going from being placed in the NICU years ago to having these blessings brought to you, it took you somewhere else, didn't it?
It took me to definitely a different place to call home, that's for sure.
So that place is called Pepper's Ranch.
It is called Pepper's Ranch Foster Care Community.
And you first went there as a resident?
As a mom and a dad, renting a house, wanting to make the most of the needs and be able to supply or provide for children in care.
Tell the court how that works. You came in and there's a place for you to live?
Yeah, the founder of Pepper's Ranch, an amazing man named Hal French, had truly this vision of a neighborhood, a neighborhood in which foster families live, foster families reside. This is their place that they call home, where there's no judgment, there's no no name calling, no hidden motives, no agenda. It's where people walk your walk and talk your talk every day. So sitting in this amazing community of right now 2 locations in 700 acres, you have 17 amazing families and 130 children that call Pepper's Ranch home. And what I think I love about it most is my biological children are the minority. You have children there that have a story, that have a nightmare of a story, but they're healing with each other in this community. It's a landlord-tenant relationship, 26 programs on site that help these children, everything from pet therapy, art therapy, a school of ballet, all of this on site. You know, I say try to get 9 children to 9 different services in one day. Yeah, right? Especially when they're in different zip codes. But to have these services on site where these children can walk there, where they live life with their brothers and sisters who otherwise they would be separated by a zip code, and instead they're separated by a pond. It's magic.
So Tanya, you went in as a tenant and you signed a lease, and I think you told me you pay about $400 a month to live there and get all the amenities.
It was truly, I mean, it was how do you do foster care better, and how do you equip families with the needs, with them still working full-time jobs outside of the home, and allow them to care for a minimum of 5 children in addition to any biological children that they have.
So let's make sure we understand that. To be able to qualify, you have to agree to care for 5 foster children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. And at some point, you said, I think you said earlier about stepping up and stepping out. You took another step. You put your money where your mouth is at Pepper Ranch, and you took a job there, right?
I did. I took over program services and parent support in 2011, and then was named executive director in 2013, and that's been my position ever since.
And as the executive director, one of the things you have to do is write grants.
Write grants.
And that's something you learned to do on the fly. I think you told me, how many grants did you write the first day you were told that was something you needed to do?
Yeah, I was not a seasoned grant writer, but at the same time, I was like, I have a story to tell. And if I have a story to tell, maybe people will listen. And so jumped on Google, which is good for so many different things, and said, how do I write a grant? And I started writing them, and I truly, the first night, I was like, okay, I got this. And I think, processed 18 in one day. Or maybe it was 21, I can't remember. It was a lot of grants.
So we're not here to talk about Pepper's Ranch in the sense of, it's Pepper's Ranch, but we are here to talk about what is needed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You believe here because of, let me ask you a little differently. Do you believe that because of this crisis the state's in, we're seeing more kids in need of care, and we need more people available to help with it?
There is no question that the opioid crisis has caused an influx and an overwhelming crisis in of the children currently in foster care in Oklahoma.
Now, you have about a 1.5-minute video that kind of shows what Pepper's Ranch is and how it works in the community, right?
I do.
Do you believe it would help the court understand what it takes to take this many kids off of wherever they are, out of abandonment or potentially on the street, and put them into a home? Do you think it would help the court to see that?
I think foster children are labeled. I think if you talk about some people, they're like, why in the world would you want to be a foster parent? Because these kids are, they're troublemakers. And I'm like, are they? I'm like, have you ever seen the face of foster care? So I believe this video gives a very clear picture of what the face of Oklahoma foster care looks like, and these children that are going to be our future leaders and caretakers.
Your Honor, this video is about 1.5 hours. I showed it to counsel before we began. 2.5 minutes.
You said 1.5 hours.
Well, sometimes they say I go on too long, so I've adopted
stipulate
it.
to that. I think the video's 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's 2.5 minutes actually. If we like to publish it this time.
Ms. Strong?
And Your Honor, it would be subject to the same objections that I made at sidebar.
I overrule the objections. I'll allow for this video to be shown, and we'll mark it as Court Exhibit 89.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Medina, if you'll play it this time.
89. Your Honor, did you mean 90? I think you already wanted 89.
I think 88 was the first one we
Okay,
showed.
sorry, thank you.
We were going to do 89, but we didn't put it in, so this will be 89.
The best way to describe Pepper's Ranch or a day in the life is beautiful chaos. Whether it's a 4:30 a.m. wake-up call to who stole the last Pop-Tart and, where's my homework, serving the population from birth and beyond is what we do. I'm Tanya Rack, Executive Director and Mother of at Pepper's Ranch Foster Care Team. I love being a mom. It's one of the best things I do every day. And to think that there are children without a family, without a place to call home, that's tragic. If I can be a mom and our family can be that family to a child that doesn't have a family, why not? There's plenty of money around. The question is, how do you do foster care better? How do you ensure that they have a family that they know they can depend on? Because founder of that time, Al French, looked at this and said, I want a different model to where these children can be, educated and have skill sets and not just serve boys, but serve boys and girls. And we want to do this through the generosity of Oklahoma and beyond. Pepper's Ranch actually became the first foster care community in the state of Oklahoma, serving boys and girls with a community approach to where we're seeking out the best of the best when it comes to parents to really break that cycle of child abuse and neglect. It definitely is a game changer. Programs and services at Pepper's Ranch are obviously a necessary piece of the support that we give to Oklahoma foster children. So everything from academic tutoring, the school of ballet, on-site pet therapy, trauma therapy, we are what we are due to the generosity of Oklahoma and beyond. I feel like Oklahoma knows that we will do, whatever it takes to make sure that excellence in care is on the forefront of the plan that we have for children in foster care. It's an amazing place to call. There are so many people that think that the foster care crisis in Oklahoma will never come to an end. And I think Pepper's Ranch can be that change for Oklahoma. I do believe that Pepper's Ranch has a model and has a method that is reproducible, number one, and that can be put in multiple counties across the state, not to mention replicated across the entire United States and in other countries. That will really bring change to what the foster care system is.
Thank you for letting us show, Your Honor. We're just about done. I have a few more questions. Tanya, you mentioned that something in there, you said some people believe this crisis, and you were referring to a lack of available parents, would never come to an end. Is it your goal that we won't need foster care for opioid-related problems? Is that one of your goals?
Opioid-related problems and beyond. I mean, we win when there are more families searching for children than children searching for families.
That's the ultimate goal for you.
That's the ultimate goal.
So real quick, you mentioned something called Scissortail. You said you were recently, I guess, honored at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What is that?
So the Scissortail, they had the Scissortail Festival over in Tulsa, and the mayor and his wife chose foster care as the beneficiary for that specific event. So we were honored at that event as a community of change for Oklahoma, and we were honored with a gift, a monetary gift.
Great.
Yes.
Now, Tanya, you were talking about one of your children earlier with me, and I asked you the question in private. I said, why have you done all this? And including this being here today. You told me a story about what it's like when one of your children takes off their shirt. Do you remember that?
I do.
Can you tell the court why you said that and what you were talking about?
So people think we're crazy for doing what we do. And they always ask us, are you finished? And I said, I don't know. I don't think you can put a number on our home when there are so many children that need a family. And one of my babies specifically, when he takes off his shirt, you will see a scar from his sternum all the way down to his belly button. And you'll also see what looks like a puncture wound in the side of his belly. And so when he's swimming or when he's taking a shower, but most of the time when he takes off his shirt, obviously that's presentable to anyone who's within his presence, and they want to ask, they're like, what happened to you? And his response will be that his birth mom made some really bad choices. And what I tell JT is that's a battle wound, right? That's a war wound. And that's something that makes you stronger, that makes you better. And you tell everyone that regardless of what you were born into, you have the ability to be anything. You have the ability to change the world. And it's through your experience and what you were born into that you are going to be an overwhelming amount of success.
Tanya, what do you want the court to take from you being here today? Why are you here, and what's your message?
I want everyone in this courtroom to understand that Our state is in crisis mode. There are children that are dying. There are children that are pleading and begging and hoping for a home and for a family. And that addiction and poverty is ripping it apart. And there's no question about that. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, everyone in this courtroom they have a job, they have a duty to do the right thing and to change the face of the future of Oklahoma. And I believe that everyone in here can do that. You have some very powerful people in this room, and I'm not one of them, but I'm telling you, there's power in this room. And together, change can be made for the better good and for the future of Oklahoma.
Tanya, you may be one of the most powerful people I've ever met. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Pass the witness.
Ms. Strong, let's take a 10-minute break.
Your Honor, it's only a couple minutes. If you'd like, we can get her excused. And
We can do that.
okay. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. I first just want to say thank you for all that you have done for the foster children of Oklahoma.
Thank you.
It's quite extraordinary.
More work to be done.
I know, I'm a mother, and I understand.
Yeah.
And I'd like to recognize that as a daughter of someone who suffers from the disease of addiction, you have endured a significant amount of emotional pain, correct?
Correct.
And I'm just going to ask you a couple questions about your father. You explained that he started taking pills in connection with a motorcycle accident, correct?
That is correct.
And that was in 1986?
I think it was 1986 or 1985. I remember I was really young.
Right, you were about 5 or 6.
5 or 6, yeah.
And at some point he started abusing those pills?
Correct.
But you don't know what kind of medication, what kind of pain pills your father was taking, correct?
That is correct.
And now in your role as an adult, with the foster children that you have in your own home and those that you work with at Pepper's Ranch, you know that many of these children have been exposed to drugs through their birth mothers in utero, correct?
Correct.
And they include opioids, right?
Correct.
But you don't know what opioids those children have been exposed to in utero, correct?
That is correct.
I have no further questions for you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
One quick question. You do know that your stepfather used a certain type of drug, right?
Yes.
And you described it. What did he use? And you saw that he would use in a hot shower.
The patch. The pain relieving patch.
Thank you.
The
Your Honor, we
opioid patch. The pain relieving patch.
Your Honor, we pass the witness and ask that she be excused.
Thank you, Ms. Radcliffe. You may be excused. Thank you. You may be excused. Counsel, if you could come up for a minute.
Pennsylvania.
You live in Pennsylvania?
Yes, I do.
And who's your employer right now?
Janssen Pharmaceutical.
And your employer has designated you to testify on its behalf today.
Yes,
And you're here to do that.
yes,
You understand that what you say here in court can be binding on Janssen
yes,
and Johnson & Johnson?
yes.
I'm going to refer to those named collectively as Johnson & Johnson. If we just have an agreement that if I use that name and your answer doesn't apply to them but only applies to some specific entity, can you let me know that?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Sir, what topic or topics do you understand you to be coming to testify about today?
I understand that I'm here to testify about our relationships with industry associations and other opioid manufacturers.
And you're prepared to do that?
Yes,
And how long have you been at Johnson & Johnson?
34 years.
What role do you currently have there?
The current role is Director of Trade Operations.
What does that mean?
So we are tasked with making sure that we have product physically available in the supply chain pipeline.
Is that all products or ones related to certain aspects of your business?
That is for all of our currently marketed products in the U.S.
So that would be Q-tips to pain relief,
No, it would be all of our prescription, just our prescription drugs.
just prescription drugs.
Correct.
Have you ever worked with Noramco?
I have not.
But you're familiar with how Noramco supplied Johnson & Johnson with certain products that were used in your finished pharmaceutical goods?
I am familiar with that.
Okay. Now, in your position at Johnson & Johnson for over 34 years, you've become familiar with the Code of Conduct. Is that correct?
Correct.
Your company has a Code of Conduct.
Correct.
That Code of Conduct applies to all Johnson & Johnson employees in every aspect of their employment at J&J, correct?
Correct.
There is nothing that you would do in your scope of employment at Johnson & Johnson that isn't touched by your obligations under this Code of Business Conduct, correct?
It's what guides our actions, yes.
All actions.
Correct.
It's what you aspire to live up to as a Johnson & Johnson employee, correct?
That would be correct.
And it's what the company holds itself to as well, correct?
That is correct.
The Code of Conduct is the standard by which the company holds itself.
Correct.
So I handed you a copy I printed off from your website as Exhibit 1. And you see there for the jury, it says Code of Business Conduct.
Yes, I do.
And underneath it, it says, live our credo, know our code.
Correct.
Okay. So let's just start with your credo. If you'll turn to the first page. You're familiar with your credo?
Yes, I am.
Now, if you'll look on the third paragraph there, the credo starts with a sentence. Would you mind reading the jury what your credo says about your role here in the community?
We are responsible to the communities in which we live and work, and to the world community as well. We must be good citizens, support good works and charities, and bear our fair share of taxes. We must encourage civic improvements and better health and education. We must maintain in good order the property we are privileged to use, protecting the environment and natural resources.
Now, your job at J&J requires you to live up to this credo. We established that?
Yes,
But it also requires the company to live up to its own credo, right?
correct.
Because credos are meaningless if the people that write them don't abide by them.
Correct.
When it says here that you're responsible to the communities in which you live and work, that includes the state of Oklahoma, doesn't it?
I would interpret it as all communities.
Including the state of Oklahoma?
Correct.
And you're here today testifying under oath in the state of Oklahoma.
Yes.
You understand we have an opioid crisis in this country, correct?
I understand that it has been in the press about an opioid crisis, yes.
And it says here that we must encourage civic improvements and better health and education. Do you see that? Third sentence?
Yes.
And I think I asked you, but let's just get this clear. You testified there's not one thing within the scope of your work at Johnson & Johnson that's not touched by the Code of Conduct, correct?
Correct.
And that would include your job as trade operations, correct?
Correct.
And it includes any involvement with third parties with whom you do business, correct?
Define third parties.
We'll get to that, it's right here in this document. So going back to the code of conduct applies to all employees and all work that happens at Johnson & Johnson, correct?
Correct.
So I just asked you a question. If you're responsible to the communities in which you live and work, what is your company doing to help us abate the opioid crisis we have in the state of Oklahoma?
Once again, I'm not aware of what's being done specifically in the state of Oklahoma. It's really beyond my scope and my job and what I'm responsible for doing.
This code of conduct requires Johnson & Johnson to do its part to improve public health in the communities in which it lives and works, correct?
Once again, I can't comment to exactly what's being done in the state of Oklahoma.
Sir, that's not what I asked you. What I asked you was, does this code of conduct require Johnson & Johnson to be responsible for improving public health in the communities in which Johnson & Johnson lives and works? I didn't ask you what you're doing. I said, does this code of conduct require?
Once again, it's written in the credo. It's an aspiration. I can't comment to exactly what steps are being taken at every level.
But you agree it's in the credo?
Yes.
And those credos aren't, goals are not set to be aspirational, though. That is the standard by which Johnson & Johnson holds itself accountable, correct?
It's a standard, yes.
That to which all employees at Johnson & Johnson are held accountable.
Correct.
And it says the values and principles spelled out in our credo serve as our compass. The Johnson & Johnson Code of Business Conduct code is the roadmap that helps us stay on course with those values. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it says stay on course, right?
Yes.
Then below that, it says, why don't you read the next sentence for the jury?
The code sets basic requirements for business conduct and serves as a foundation for our company policies, procedures, and guidance, all of which provide additional guidance and expected behaviors.
Okay, thank you. Then it says, why do we have a code and why must we follow it? And the first part of that says, to continue to operate and maintain our reputation as a company that puts first the needs of the people we serve around the world, we must learn, understand, and comply with our code. It says that right there, right?
Correct.
And then if you go to the third paragraph, it says whenever we become aware of a violation of the code, company policy, or the law, we will act to address the problem and prevent future occurrences. Did I state that correctly?
Correct.
And it says, depending on the circumstances, corrective and preventative steps might include training, counseling, and disciplinary actions up to and including termination of employment. You see that?
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
So we see those words there, corrective steps and preventative steps, correct?
Correct.
Then finally there, it says you have a responsibility to speak up when you are in a situation or are aware of a situation that you believe may violate or lead to a violation of the code, company policy, or the law. It says that right there, right?
Correct.
And as we established, the Johnson & Johnson Code of Conduct doesn't just apply to employees, it applies to the company itself, right?
Correct.
And right there it says that Johnson & Johnson and its employees have a responsibility to speak up when you are aware of a situation you believe may lead to a violation of the code, company policy, or the law. It says it right there in black and white, doesn't it, sir?
Correct.
Here it says who must follow the code. And it talks about the roles of employees and your job. But in the third paragraph here, it says if you have a management role, you have additional responsibilities to serve as a positive role model in every respect and to help your employees review and understand and apply the code. You see that?
Yes.
But right after that, it says individuals and companies conducting business on our behalf must also follow our code of business conduct. Correct?
Correct.
And then it finishes that sentence, and the next sentence says something a little different. Applicable provisions of this code should be included in the contracts of third-party suppliers, manufacturers, contractors, vendors, and distributors doing business on behalf of the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, correct?
Correct.
You understand my question, don't you? That statement, do you understand that to be fairly broad in scope?
It covers a variety of partners.
J&J partners.
Yes.
Okay, if you'll turn to page 12, please. It says every employee's duty. Do you see that?
Yes.
And under that, in bold, second set off, it says development, approval, manufacture, sales, and marketing of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, diagnostics, and consumer products and services. You see that?
Yes.
It goes on down and it says, we aspire to bring the highest standards and level of integrity to each of these business activities by, and it lists quite a few things. Would you please read number 6, second from the bottom?
Following all laws and regulations regarding the promotion, marketing, and sales of our products, including ensuring that what we say is truthful, not misleading, and is consistent with the regulatory approvals for our products.
So that is stated here on page 12 of your code of conduct. That sentence you just read for the jury, that is every employee's responsibility, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the word is not responsibility, it's something else. What is it at the top of that page?
Every employee's duty.
Okay, sir. So there's a lot in that document. Those are the things that come to mind as I sit here today. I want us to keep that in mind while we go through your testimony today. Is it a true statement that the code of conduct and credo of Johnson & Johnson is an important thing for your company to live by?
Yes.
Again, it's not just aspirational. It is the model of conduct by which your company holds itself accountable.
Correct.
Hands you another Aramco document, Exhibit 5. It'll be easier if I just hand it to you and pass it to the attorney. So this is Exhibit 5 is an October 2015 PowerPoint that was prepared for this potential sale of an Aramco worldwide narcotics franchise. The document is JANOK 001499992. If you'll turn to page 5. Page 5 lists the strategic rationale for the seller. And it states Johnson & Johnson is exploring the sale of the global narcotics business for the following reasons. You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The first one says J&J's strategy no longer includes narcotic analgesics.
Correct.
At some point, someone came and told you that you were getting out of the prescription pain pill business, right?
Yes.
Who told you that?
It was really just made more as a general announcement in terms of the areas of strategic focus for the pharmaceutical business, in terms of what areas we would be focused in moving forward in terms of research and in terms of sales and marketing.
That was in the 2014 timeframe?
Yeah, it could have been even more earlier than that in terms of the direction. There were other franchises we also no longer became involved in, like women's health care. So this wasn't the only one. It was really the direction changed significantly in terms of the areas that we would focus on in the future.
You, being J&J, had made a significant investment in the pain franchise, fair?
Correct.
Go through this from prior to 1995 when you had Duragesic through the 2010 to 2012 range. J&J and its different companies were involved with quite a few prescription pain products, fair?
Correct.
You also owned Naranco.
Correct.
Which was a supplier of API for a lot of different pain prescribers, or excuse me, companies that sold pain products.
I don't know the actual number, but I would assume that we were providing to other manufacturers, yes.
And as we see, you also owned Tasmania Alkaloids, which we see in the document we just looked at, had the Norman strain of poppy, which was transformational in the growth of oxycodone, correct?
That's what was stated in the slide deck and in the paper, yes.
So the pain franchise, which the Naranco gentleman said included Naranco, you use that definition. It was an important part of J&J's business from the mid-1990s to after 2010. Fair?
That would be fair, yes.
Then, sometime in the 2012-13 range, regulators started looking at what we ultimately called an epidemic related to substance use disorder and opioid overdose. You're aware of that?
I'm aware of that taking place, yes.
Johnson & Johnson carries itself as a family company, right? Fair?
Correct.
A company that's good for the community?
Yes,
A company that does the right thing?
I believe so.
A company that lives by that code of conduct?
Yes, I believe so.
And then in 2014 to 15, as the opioid crisis is being discussed everywhere and every day in the papers, J&J divested itself of its paying franchise, and it chooses to divest itself of the company that makes the APIs for a lot of these drugs, right?
Once again, I can't speak to what the reasons were for those moves.
Well, would you tell this judge and jury whether it's a true statement that it's pure coincidence that J&J made this sharp exit from the pain franchise?
You know, once again, since I'm not involved in those decisions, I don't know what the planning timeline would have been for something like that. Those types of decisions probably require a much longer time horizon to make that decision and then to actually execute it. So I really couldn't tell you how far back the planning or thinking was in terms of executing the exit out of that franchise.
Well, you've been there 34 years.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a knowledgeable man in the industry?
Knowledgeable in my segments.
Fair enough. All right, we'll turn to page 16. The franchise strategy, you see that?
Yes.
And it says, leverage our vertical integration to deliver the best cost, highest quality controlled substance APIs.
Yes.
And underneath that, one of the things that said is, partner with best cost technology focused manufacturers.
Correct.
That word there is partner.
Correct.
And you consider people that you did business with in that regard partners, what it says right there.
Correct.
But I'm not making that word up. It's in this document from Naramco.
Correct.
And it's what J&J used to hold Naramco out for purchase by Willie Black.
In this document, correct.
The word partner.
Correct.
Now, it also says at the bottom, participate in growth through partnerships, right?
Correct.
Again, we see that word partnerships, right?
Correct.
Okay. So going back through that, all that you've looked at today, you understand that Naramco supplied API to pharmaceutical manufacturers, correct?
As we see here today, correct.
You understand that one of those manufacturers was Purdue and its related entities.
Yeah, based upon everything we reviewed.
And you also understand that one of those manufacturers is Teva and any of its related entities, correct?
Based upon all the documents that we reviewed.
The question I asked was very simple and straightforward, so let's just go back. And what I asked was, at any point in time, did Johnson & Johnson go to any of those entities and tell them that Johnson & Johnson did not want to do business with them? That was the question. It was very straightforward.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Now, we saw documents earlier today where Johnson & Johnson and the Naramco devs talked about being partners with the companies that sold API. You remember that?
Yes.
And that would lead to growth for the Naramco business and the industry. Do you remember seeing that?
It was in one of the documents, yes.
Now, you understand that one of the entities that Naramco sold products to was Purdue.
That's my understanding.
And you understand that one of those products, or API products, was different versions of oxycodone, based on what we looked at today.
Based on the reports we looked at.
The code of conduct applies to anyone with whom you do business.
I would assume so.
Okay? And as we talked about earlier, it applies to partners like any opioid companies you do business with as well, right?
assume that, yes.
Okay, and it's undeniable, based on what we've seen today, that Noranco, a Johnson & Johnson owned company, provided active pharmaceutical ingredient to Purdue and certain affiliates, correct?
Based upon the documents we reviewed, that would seem to indicate that.
To clean that up, there was an objection. Based upon the documents you reviewed today, your answer seems to indicate that Johnson & Johnson's company, Noranco, supplied API to Purdue and certain affiliates, correct?
With the information provided today, that seems correct.
And as a Johnson & Johnson designee here today, you understand that your code of conduct requires Johnson & Johnson to be a good citizen in the community, right?
That's what's stated in the document.
It requires you to make sure that you do what you can for the community's public health.
That's what's in the document, yes.
And we looked at certain things that said you can't go misrepresent things to doctors and patients, right?
That's correct.
You don't dispute any of that.
Correct.
And it also said that your partners that you do business with, you have to hold them to that same standard too.
That's what's stated in the document.
And it tells you that if they're not doing that or anyone's not doing that, you need to stand up and do something about it, right?
Correct.
And that same concept that we talked about, the same kind of thing that your mom and daddy taught you when you were a kid, right?
Yes.
Just basic right and wrong.
Yes.
Okay. So, Purdue, in this document here, is a 2003 report from the General Accounting Office of the United States. You see that in front of you?
Yes.
And we don't have to go through the whole thing, but if you want to, we can go through it line by line because it's quite insightful. If you just turn to page 2, though, it states in early 2000, second paragraph, top sentence, media reports began to surface in several states that OxyContin was being abused. That is, used for non-therapeutic purposes or for purposes other than those for which it was prescribed and illegally diverted. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's turn to the next page. Look at page 4. See where it says results in brief?
Yes.
It says Purdue conducted an extensive campaign to market and promote OxyContin using an expanded sales force and multiple promotional approaches to encourage physicians, including primary care specialists, to prescribe OxyContin as an initial opioid treatment for non-cancer pain. You see that?
Which page are you on?
Page 4.
Okay. Yes.
It goes on to say that OxyContin sales and prescriptions grew rapidly following its market introduction in 1996, with the growth in prescriptions for non-cancer pain outpacing the growth in prescriptions for cancer pain from 1997 through 2002. You see that?
Yes.
And by 2003, nearly half of all OxyContin prescribers were primary care physicians. You see that?
Yes.
And then it says something else. DEA has expressed concern that Purdue's aggressive marketing of OxyContin focused on promoting the drug to treat a wide range of conditions to physicians who may not have been adequately trained in pain relief. You see that?
Yes.
Says it right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Then it goes on to say, Purdue has been cited twice by FDA for using potentially false or misleading medical journal advertisements for OxyContin that violated the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, including one advertisement that failed to include warnings about the potentially fatal risk associated with OxyContin use. Which says that too, right?
Yes.
It goes on to say, further, Purdue did not submit an OxyContin promotional video for FDA review at the time of an initial distribution in 1998 as required by FDA regulations, correct?
That's what it states.
And then it says in its written comments, DEA agreed that the data on abuse and aversion are not reliable, comprehensive, or timely as we reported. DEA reiterated its previous statement that Purdue's aggressive marketing of OxyContin fueled demand for the drug and exacerbated the drug's abuse and aversion. See that?
Yes.
It also says DEA also stated that Purdue minimized the abuse risk associated with OxyContin. See that?
Yes.
And it says, we agree with DEA that Purdue conducted an extensive campaign to market and promote OxyContin using an expanded sales force and multiple promotional approaches to encourage physicians, including primary care specialists, to prescribe OxyContin as an initial opioid treatment for non-cancer pain, and that these efforts may have contributed to the problems with abuse and diversion by increasing the availability of the drug in the marketplace. See that?
Yes.
I just read to you a public report that's been in existence since December of 2003, and granted, it's long. I selected certain things to get to the point, but what I read to you was in the document, correct?
Correct.
And at the end, it says that this document was given to Purdue for comment, and that Purdue said it was fair and balanced, but for the things they wanted at. You saw that too?
Yes.
Okay. So, after this report came out, did Johnson & Johnson go to Purdue and tell Purdue that Johnson & Johnson no longer wished to be a business partner with Purdue? Yes or no?
As we sit here today, I don't know if they did or did not.
You're here as their designee. Do you know them?
As we sit here today, no, I'm not aware of any.
There's nothing prohibiting Johnson & Johnson from going to his business partner and saying, if what's in this GAO report is true, we got a problem. No reason Johnson & Johnson couldn't have done that.
There would have been no reason we couldn't, but I'm not aware that we did or did not have any discussions with them.
But there's no reason he couldn't have done that.
Not that I'm aware of.
And Johnson & Johnson's company, Randco, could have gone to Purdue and said, we are not going to supply you oxycodone because of the kind of conduct reported in the GAO report.
Like I said, I have no way of knowing.
Johnson & Johnson could have gone to Purdue and told Purdue, we are no longer going to supply you with oxycodone. They could have done that.
In theory, yes.
To be clear, I'm not asking whether it happened. I'm asking whether the code of conduct, as you understand it, and the seat that Johnson & Johnson holds today, is that required?
I don't know if we necessarily require this stop, because it would be based upon whatever discussions took place with Purdue and whatever steps they were taking to remedy the situation.
You say you don't know if it necessarily requires you to stop, right?
Right.
You do agree it requires you to at least go and sit down with Purdue and find out what's going on. You agree with that?
As we sit here today, I would say that's a reasonable assumption.
A reasonable interpretation of your code of conduct.
Yes.
Right? Because if you're in business with somebody who's doing business with your product, you have a responsibility to make sure that product's not being used for an improper purpose, right?
I think you'd want to do everything you could to make sure that you were clear on how they were using your product.
Johnson & Johnson would want to do everything it could to make sure it was clear on how Purdue was using the product.
In terms of how they were addressing the findings from this study, I think that would be reasonable.
And if you don't take actions to correct it, if something goes bad, you got to own the consequences of your own failure. You have to own it.
Well, I think if you made all your efforts to make those corrective actions, the other party also has an obligation on their part.
You have to make all your efforts to make those corrective actions, right?
I think you have to make reasonable efforts, yes.
Because when you are in a partnership with a third party that is a commercial partnership, you're in a partnership with them, right?
Well, you're being a contractual arrangement with them also, so there, I'm sure, has to be contracts that are in place for that also.
And as we showed earlier today with documents, the way the Randco viewed this was your API was an integral part of the supply chain for the people that you do business with, right?
That's what was indicated in your documents.
Because you can't have OxyContin without oxycodone. True?
True.
And so if Purdue can't get the oxycodone from you, they either aren't going to have it, or they're going to have to get it from someone else, correct?
That would be a correct assumption.
It's just like any other example. If your business partner is doing wrong, and they're doing that wrong with something that you supply them with, it's incumbent on you to do something to try to stop it. Agree?
I think it would be incumbent upon us to ensure that they took the corrective actions that were necessary.
What I asked you was, Johnson & Johnson needed to go to Purdue and get the assurances that Purdue had taken all the steps it needed to take, right?
I'm sure there's, like I said, sitting here today, I can't say for certain if those discussions took place, but I would assume you would have those discussions with your business partner.
You would assume that Johnson & Johnson would have those business discussions with Purdue. That's what you just said.
Yes.
Tell the jury. What discussions did J&J actually have with Purdue to ensure that Purdue would no longer engage in the conduct that was being alleged?
I have no knowledge of what they would be. That's not something I would have been involved with.
Can you point to one conversation that Johnson & Johnson engaged in with Purdue to make sure that Purdue would not engage in this type of conduct going forward?
As we see here today, no, I cannot.
Now, I would like for you to turn let me just ask you this. You understand that Purdue pled guilty to a federal crime related to misbranding OxyContin, correct?
Yes.
Objection beyond the scope. You understand that your business partner, Purdue, pled guilty to a felony related to misbranding OxyContin.
Based on this documentation, yes.
You understand that the CEO of Purdue, your partner, pled guilty to a misdemeanor related to this conduct.
Based upon the documentation, yes.
You understand that the chief medical officer of your partner, Purdue, pled guilty to a misdemeanor, federal misdemeanor, related to misbranding OxyContin.
Based upon the documents, yes.
And you understand that the chief legal officer of Purdue pled guilty to a federal misdemeanor related to conduct in the marketing and promotion of OxyContin. You understand that, right?
Yes.
And the documents that we're looking at today that announce all this, May 10, 2007, right?
Yes.
And this is a press release.
Yes.
And attached to that are all the legal documents. Now, the date is May 10, 2007, correct?
Correct.
I think that's exactly right. You're here in front of this judge and jury in 2019. And today, you can't even testify whether you know if Purdue took any action to correct this kind of conduct, right? You don't know.
As we sit here today, I don't.
But what you do know is after 2007 and after this plea agreement, Noranco continued to supply product to Rose Tech.
According to the documents produced, that's what it would indicate.
Next Gen V-Bank to Rose Tech.
That would be indicated in those sales items.
And other opioid APIs to Purdue Pharma and related incidents. We went through all that list. And
Yes, we did.
so you didn't stop doing business with Purdue in 2003, right?
Not to my knowledge.
You did not stop doing business with Purdue in 2007.
Not to my knowledge.
And you were still doing business with Purdue right up until the time you sold Noranco off.
That's what would be indicated in the sales documents.
So you, Johnson & Johnson, from 2007 on, engaged in a business partnership with an opioid manufacturer that was an admitted felon. True.
They had admitted to, according to the documentation here. So that's what the documentation states.
At no point in time did Noranco ever stop doing business with Purdue or Rose Tech.
Not according to the sales data that you reviewed.
Kept selling the product,
I would assume so, based upon that, yes.
kept making money.
That's what was in the reports.
And when you tried to sell Noranco, you used the past history of making money and forward-looking contracts to show buyers how much Noranco could be worth, right?
That was in the slide deck they would provide,
And
yes.
you sold Noranco.
Yes.
You made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
I don't know what the final selling price was.
You have to own responsibility for your own conduct, right?
Well,
We all do, right? Yes.
Yes.
So you're telling me your code of conduct says you can do business with anybody that the federal government allows to stay in business, no matter what they do? Is that what you, it's not the criteria, is it?
No.
Your code of conduct is the code of practice, is the criteria you live by, right? Right?
It's one of them, yes.
And it says you cannot let your business partners go misrepresent things to doctors and patients. And it's said, we've read it twice today. You don't disagree with it, do you?
Technical performance code.
And you talk about not knowing whether they had a seatbelt on or whatever you said there. The only reason that Johnson & Johnson wouldn't know is if Johnson & Johnson didn't take affirmative action to go engage with its business partner and find out what the heck was going on. Right?
And as I said previously, I don't know if that ever happened.
You're here today as Johnson & Johnson, and you can't answer the question because you don't know.
Because that was not my role to fulfill, to go have that discussion with Purdue. That was not my position.
And we're here in Oklahoma in the midst of an opioid crisis. And I just want you to tell the jury, what specifically did Johnson & Johnson do to try to intercept or stop the conduct that Purdue was engaged in during all these years?
I have no first-hand knowledge as to what was done or not done.
Can you tell the jury even one thing that Johnson & Johnson did to intervene with its business partner, Purdue? Just one thing.
I wouldn't have that knowledge.
So, let me ask my question again. Can you tell this jury even one thing that Johnson & Johnson did to get with Purdue, try to keep this kind of conduct from not happening? One thing.
As we sit here today, I cannot give you that. I don't know.
Exhibit 26 is a document that you brought in here today.
Yes.
Was that prepared by your attorneys or you?
So it was prepared at my request in conjunction with my attorneys.
Okay, and it says business dealings with other opioid manufacturers. Do you see that?
That is correct.
Number F, or letter F, says Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, PHRMA.
Correct.
At least 95 to the present?
Correct.
Okay, and then here you list certain opioid manufacturers that you may have done business with. The first one is item 2A. It says Purdue, and lists all these Purdue entities. A co-development and co-promotional agreement for Ultram SR.
Yes.
And it says that you looked at doing that agreement, but decided, I guess, terminated it prior to actually approving the product.
Yes.
It's true, when you look at the documents, that while y'all were engaging in the agreement, the idea was that Janssen and Johnson & Johnson wanted to utilize Purdue's sales force so that both companies' sales forces could sell that product, correct?
Well, part of the discussion was around both co-development and co-promotion, and that the two organizations would segment in terms of which areas each would promote in.
Combined forces,
Yeah.
including sales forces.
That was my understanding, that there was discussions around co-promotion, but the agreement never came to fruition, so it was ended without that ever coming to pass.
But on page 2, we see in item 2B,
Yes,
Purdue and Janssen did enter into a licensing agreement for Ultram ER, correct?
that is correct.
And Janssen licensed Purdue's intellectual property rights, and as you say here, waived its statutory exclusivity for Ultram ER, correct?
Yes,
With respect to Purdue's partner, Labo Farm, correct?
yes,
And J&J actually paid a royalty to Purdue for sales of Ultram ER, correct?
which would be the normal in these types of arrangements where it's normally a royalty payment when you license in a product from another entity and you commercialize that product.
And that agreement was entered into in 2005.
Correct.
And if I remember correctly, the royalty was 5%.
It could be, yeah, it sounds about right.
And how long did that agreement last?
Up until, I believe until we lost exclusivity on the product, so I couldn't give you the exact date, but we could get that date in terms of when that agreement ended.
It was several years.
Yeah.
And it certainly lasted beyond the time that Purdue pled guilty to a federal crime related to OxyContin.
I would assume, I'd have to look at the exact dates, but it was 2007, this was 2005, so I would assume it ran in that time frame.
And Janssen agreement in 2005, which was 2 years after the general accounting office report that we went through earlier today, which was issued in 2003, correct?
That is correct.
So while those matters dealt with OxyContin, Janssen still chose to engage in an agreement related to Ultran with Purdue.
In this case, yes, we licensed the intellectual property from them, but we took full responsibility for the development and promotion of the product.
And you paid Purdue a license for them,
Yes.
and it was profitable for Janssen.
I'm sure it was, yes.
So I'll hand you to the 30. Okay, so this document is a PowerPoint, and you know who Ron Coons is, right?
Yes.
He's a Janssen employee.
Yes.
This PowerPoint, we'll just go through the slides. It's titled, first slide on the left, Johnson & Johnson, Partner of Choice in Pharmaceuticals. You see that?
Yes.
And if we'll turn through this a little bit, we'll turn to the second page. It shows that Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals Group is the 5th largest pharmaceuticals company in the world.
At that time, yes.
It shows, bottom right-hand quarter, in billions, the net pharmaceutical trade sales for 3-year CGR. You see that?
Yes.
It shows in 1997, $7.9 billion in pharmaceutical net sales, right?
That's what the slide shows.
These are trade sales, right?
Yes.
And it goes up in 2001 to $14.9 billion.
Correct.
Now, if you'll turn to the next page, on the bottom left, it shows the strong leading brands, top 10, you see that?
Yes.
And you list several different brands, right?
Yes.
One of those is Duragesic.
That's correct.
That's an opioid product in the pain franchise, correct?
That is a patch, yes.
A fentanyl patch.
Correct.
And then we also have Ultran listed, which was it's a Pindadol related drug, correct?
Correct.
So showing in 2001 worldwide sales at $875 million for Duragesic, correct?
That is correct.
And $577 million for Ultran in that year.
That is correct.
And it shows in 1997, with a total of $2.6 billion, Duragesic represented 19% and Ultran represented 13%. Or I'm going to read now. Duragesic's 10% and Ultran is 13%, correct?
Correct, in 97.
And then in 2001, it shows $7.9 billion, correct?
Yes,
Duragesic's at 11% and Ultran's at 7%, correct?
that's correct.
Just turn to the next page. On the top left, it says Johnson & Johnson, the partner of choice. You see that?
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
On the bottom left, we have Johnson & Johnson Clinical Development, and it says analgesics, right?
that is correct.
And explain for the jury what you understand analgesics to be.
Pain relief, medications for pain relief.
And here it says analgesics, lifelong franchise for Johnson & Johnson, right?
Correct,
And it lists 3 major products, Ultran, Duragesic, and Tylenol.
that is correct.
Now, so here it says J&J Sales and Marketing Philosophy. And to echo your point, it says we value partnership as an opportunity to create positive relationships that drive product success.
Yes,
That's true.
yes,
We value partnering as an opportunity to create positive relationships that drive product success. It's right there on the document.
yes, partner, yes.
Okay, so if we look to the right, one of the things about J&J that's listed here is U.S. marketing. See that?
That's what it says, yes.
This is a summary of marketing from the J&J perspective. The first thing that's listed is professional and personal relationships with key thought leaders in the field of pain management.
Correct.
That's something that J&J felt was indicative of its marketing.
If it's on here, I would believe that's in there.
It also says built interactive patient database established via the internet that focuses on patients' pain, condition, and therapy. See that?
Yes,
And that's listed under U.S. marketing for Janssen as well.
yes,
Then it says experience with direct-to-consumer and direct-to-patient advertising campaigns, right?
correct,
Now, that's part of U.S. marketing as well, right?
correct,
It also says working with institutions and advocacy groups, right?
correct,
So you said there might be other therapeutic categories like antibiotics, but what we're talking about here is pain.
correct,
And what it says is American Pain Society is one example.
correct.
So if you go to the next page, Johnson & Johnson talks about Ultram. See that?
Yes,
When you go through Ultram, it says rapid and sustained growth, right?
that is correct.
It goes on to say achieve rapid sales growth through physician profiling and targeting. Says that right?
Yes,
So, according to this, there in print, sales growth was achieved through profiling and targeting physicians, right?
correct.
Rapid sales growth.
That's what it says.
And that's all part of marketing.
Correct.
So when sales folks go to target physicians, that's part of marketing.
It's in any product category for any manufacturer, they go through a process of profiling as well as targeting specific physician segments.
And it works.
I would think so.
Well, the conclusion here is it did work.
But also the other reason for doing that is you want to make sure you have the appropriate physicians who should be the ones prescribing the product. So you want to make sure that the physicians are the right ones that understand and how to manage and prescribe the product.
Agree with you? It's not the question asked. This is past tense. The author of this document uses the word achieved, right?
Yes,
Meaning with respect to Ultram, rapid and sustained growth. It actually achieved rapid sales growth through profiling and targeting doctors, right?
that's what's stated on the slide. Correct.
And from 1995, net sales were how much?
115 million,
And in 2000, they were how much?
520 million,
And by 2001, they were how much?
573.
If you look over to your far left by your water bottle, exhibit, I believe 2 today, we went over some charts, right?
Correct.
What happened to oxycodone growth from 1995 to 2012?
It increased, but the one slide is showing tramadol and the other is showing OxyContin.
That's correct. My question to you is, first, the document, it's exhibit 2, what happened with oxycodone?
It increased.
And turn to the first page of that document. What happened related to opioid substance disorder and overdose from 1995?
All of the lines increased.
And what happened with Ultram from 1995 to 2001?
It increased, and also that when Ultram was first introduced in the U.S., it was not a scheduled product.
Okay. What happened with respect to Ultram from 1995 to 2001?
Sales increased.
And what happened in the bottom left corner with respect to 2001 looking forward?
The bottom, the Ultraset slide?
Yes.
So the Ultraset slide, which is the combination of tramadol and acetaminophen, shows growth also.
Up from 01 and of 25 million to 237 million estimated for 2003, right?
Correct.
Let's turn to page 13. There we look at Duragesic, right?
Yes.
It's fentanyl.
Correct.
Hear a lot about fentanyl, don't we?
Yes.
Serious drug.
For serious pain.
It's a serious drug.
Right.
And here we show in 1995, 115 million in net trade sales, right?
Yes.
to 2000, 520 million.
Yes.
So what happened for Duragesic over the period 1995 to 2000? Did it go up?
Yes.
Very similar to the chart to your left on page 1 of Exhibit 2, right?
Well, all of them are increasing.
Okay. And again, Exhibit 2, page 1 reflects what is increasing.
Opioid sales, opioid deaths, and opioid treatment admissions.
Duragesic, fentanyl, opioid, correct?
However, this rate of opioid sales, it doesn't separate out by product, so you can't just lump them all together, you gotta look at it by product.
Well, CDC lumped them all together, right?
They did.
And Duragesic is an opioid.
However, once again, it doesn't break out each of the products in terms of reports
You bet.
for each of them.
And we're doing that right now. It shows opioid product sales going up, correct?
Right, overall,
And let's look at yours. We just looked at Ultram, but here we're looking at Duragesic, right?
yes.
And from 1995 to 2001 with Duragesic, the trend is upward, correct?
The trend for sales is upward. However, there's nothing to distinguish the market basket of opioids in terms of deaths, treatment admissions. It's all lumped as one, and it's not. There's no data here that breaks it out by product to show is any one product contributing more or less. Now, Duragesic, as you know, is a patch, which leads to a bit more, a better safety profile in terms of a patch versus a tablet. So,
Better for who?
well, when prescribed according to the package insert and taken and administered according to the package insert, it's safe and effective. So,
Now, what you were trying to say earlier with Exhibit 2 is that page that talks about opioid sales is broad. It's not broken down by specific opioids, correct?
that would be correct.
And what I'm giving you an opportunity today is to look at your products and what happened with your products. And what we were talking about on page 13 is specific to Duragesic, right?
Correct.
With respect to Duragesic, from 95 to 2001, did it go up?
Sales went up.
Sales went up, right?
Right.
Just like it did for all opioids on page 1 of Exhibit 2.
Correct.
So while Exhibit 2 is all opioids generally, the upward trend for your products occurred as well. Fair?
In sales.
In sales.
Correct.
Okay. So let's look below here about your sales force. It says Janssen Cell Force Structure. See that?
Yes.
PCP Specialty Hospital Forces. You see that?
Yes.
And it shows you've got paid 339 reps. Right?
Yes.
And it lists different reps you have. PC 1, 2, 3, all have 500, right?
Correct.
Let's go to the top right for the Ortho McNeil sales force. There it shows PCP Specialty Hospital Forces, 2,403 sales reps. You see that?
Correct.
So you don't profile and target and just carry on a package insert, do you? I mean, that would be silly.
Correct.
I mean, I wouldn't pay somebody like my colleague here, Mr. Cutler, I wouldn't pay him to just go carry around a sign that says I'm a good lawyer. That'd be a waste of money, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't pay your sales force to just go to doctors and hold up a package insert, did you?
No.
That'd be silly to say, wouldn't it?
Yes, they approved promotional materials.
They were there to sell,
Yes.
and it worked, right?
That's why you have a sales force.
And we know it worked because right here on page 12, this exhibit, it says, achieved rapid sales growth through physician profiling and targeting, right?
The targeting of the appropriate physicians.
Oh, that word's not on there. You made that one up, didn't you?
No.
Let's go back to page 12.
Yeah, the word's not on there.
It's achieved rapid sales growth through physician profiling and targeting, right?
That's what it's.
Let's turn to page 15, please, Rick. You're holding yourself out to be the partner of choice here. In the bottom right, it says, why are we the best partner, right?
Yes.
well-trained field and hospital sales organizations with experience in selling analgesics, right?
Correct.
Now, it doesn't say educating doctors about analgesics, does it?
Correct.
It says selling analgesics, right?
Correct.
And then it says experienced sales organization that have relationships with the targeted audience of high prescribing analgesic prescribers. You see that?
Yes.
That doesn't just say appropriate doctors, does it?
No.
It says something far different, doesn't it?
Yes.
It says targeted audience of, say it for the jury. What does the rest of that sentence say?
High prescribing analgesic prescribers.
High prescribing analgesic prescribers. Nowhere does it say appropriate, does it?
It doesn't, but since they're high prescribing analgesic prescribers, you can take from that they're the most experienced with that therapeutic category.
I can take that. How would I know that? How would I know that?
That's why that's what you profile for, is people that are experienced with the therapeutic class.
That's what you should profile for, right? That's what you should do.
That's what I believe we do.
Well, if you lived up to your corporate code of conduct, that's what you would do, right?
While I wasn't involved directly with the profiling, I can't answer about what the methodology was for the profiling.
But you've been at that company 34 years, right?
Yes.
They chose to have you come here today and talk about relationships that you may have had with other manufacturers, right?
Yes.
This is a document holding your company out to be the best partner, right?
Yes.
And you understand the code of conduct we went through earlier, right?
Yes.
Based upon your experience with your company, it's your belief that what you should do is only target people that are experienced in using these kind of drugs to treat pain, right?
I would believe that would be our objective.
That's what you should do to live up to your code.
It would be the objective.
But that's not what you did.
I have no way of knowing that.
In fact, what you did was you targeted primary care physicians and family doctors. Did
I don't know if that's what if it was in this document somewhere.
Now let's just look at what 15 says. Experienced sales organization have relationships with the targeted audience of high prescribing analgesic prescribers. It says that right there, doesn't it?
Yes.
Knowledgeable marketing team with experience in the analgesic market and established relationships with key opinion leaders, right?
That's what it states.
It says it right here on 16. Why are we the best partner? You see that?
Yeah, today's the first time I'm seeing this slide deck.
You look at page 15, the bottom. It says, why are we the best partner? You see that?
Yes.
And in those 3 boxes, it does not say we make good drugs, does it?
Those words are not in there.
Doesn't say they're safe and effective. Doesn't.
None of those exact words are in there.
Oh, the exact words or anything like it. Word safe does not appear in there. Does it?
No, it's not in there.
But what it does talk about is the ability to have a sales organization that has relationships with the targeted audience of high prescribing analgesic prescribers, right?
That's what it states.
Now let's go to the next page, 16. Why are we the best partner? Managed care and long-term care account teams with knowledge and experience in the analgesic market. See that?
Yes.
It goes on to say relationships with key physician specialties that would provide a jump-start at launch and a continuous commitment of loyalty. It says that right there, huh?
Yes.
What's interesting, why would key physician specialties be loyal to a pharmaceutical company?
I don't know why they would be.
Why in the world would your company market itself to prospective business partners as having relationships with key physicians would have a continuous commitment of loyalty to the drug.
Since, I didn't write this, I don't know why that statement's there.
But it's there.
Yes, it is.
And when we're sitting in the room with Johnson & Johnson, and you're marketing yourself to others, this is how you portray yourself.
I don't know in what situations this slide deck was used or if it was ever used. So that would have been a question for whoever developed the deck.
Actually, a very simple question. When a doctor is in the room with the patient in an intimate setting, a doctor should never have on his mind loyalty to your company or your sales force. True?
The doctor should have on his mind selecting the best product and prescribing it according to the approved packaging.
Page 22, you see this? It says situation analysis in most markets.
Yes.
In top left, it says under treatment of pain patients, especially strong opioids. You see that?
Yes.
And there at the bottom, it says doctors in general lack information on pain therapy.
Yes.
And it says how to make new market and increase the comfort of doctors towards Duragesic. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then these other three slides talk about the results in Spain. And in the top right, it says action plan towards doctors, patients in Spain. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it says lose fear to tolerance and drug use. You see that?
Yes.
It says to increase the education and pain management by working from pain clinics through specialists to GPs. You see that?
Yes.
And it refers to that strategy as something. What does it refer to it as?
My copy's all.
I'm looking here at the second bullet point under the bar. It says from pain clinics through specialists to GPs.
Oh, okay. In the parentheses, it says domino strategy.
Domino strategy, right? Right?
Yes.
That's how y'all refer to going from pain clinics through specialists to GPs as a domino strategy. It says it right there, right?
That's what it says on the slide.
So let's talk about drugs that we talked about today. Ultram, it's an opioid, right? This graph side, Ultram's an opioid, you know that.
Today, it's a scheduled product.
And it's an opioid, it always has been. Not asking about scheduling, I'm asking you if it's an opioid.
I would assume it's classified as an opioid.
Okay, and we saw that Janssen generated sales of that opioid by itself, right?
Yes.
And we saw that Janssen contributed to, or generated sales of that opioid with supply agreements with other companies, didn't we?
Yes.
Ultracet, that's an opioid, you know that, right?
Yes.
And we saw that Janssen generated sales of that drug by itself, right?
Yes.
And we saw that Janssen generated sales of that drug with other companies, right?
Yes.
Duragesic, that's an opioid, you know that, correct?
Yes.
And we saw that Janssen generated sales of Duragesic by itself, right?
Yes.
Continues to do that today, doesn't it?
To some degree, yes.
And we saw that Janssen generated sales of Duragesic through agreements with other companies as well, didn't we?
Yes.
We saw that Janssen, through Naranco, supplied the active pharmaceutical ingredients for all three of those drugs, didn't we?
Yes.
We saw that, you saw that Naranco included providing API to Teva. Yes.
Sold API to Teva, correct.
Sold API to Purdue.
Yes.
We saw that there were supply and licensing agreements for end product opioids with Teva and Janssen, right?
The IVAX agreement?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And we saw that there were supply and licensing agreements for end product opioids between Janssen and Purdue, didn't we?
We had a licensing agreement for Ultram ER.
Through which you generated opioid sales, right?
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Matthews, you understand that Janssen sold opioids across the United States, right?
You
Naturally.
Finished product?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You understand that Janssen sold those opioids in Oklahoma just like it did in every other state in this country, right?
Yes, we did.
Now, Mr. Matthews, looking back at Exhibit 2, that first page of Exhibit 2, what happened to opioid deaths and opioid treatment admissions as opioid sales went up?
graph, they both increased.
I'm going to hand you another document, which will mark Exhibit 34 to your deposition. And I apologize, I only have 2 copies of this one. Mr. Matchett, I'll represent to you that this is an article about the increase in drug overdoses in Oklahoma. And you can see at the top of that page, it's titled Increase in Unintentional Medication Overdose Deaths, Oklahoma, 1994 through 2006.
That's what the document shows. I'd like to read the document.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit. What I want to ask you about is the figure on page 360. You're on that page?
Yes.
And that figure represents overdose death rates and sales of prescription opioids by year in Oklahoma from 1994 to 2006, correct?
That's what the graph in the study depicts.
And that graph, like the graph in Exhibit 2, shows that as opioid sales go up year over year, so too do overdose deaths, correct?
That's what the graphs reflect.
And we know 2 things, don't we, Mr. Matchett? One, that Janssen generated billions of dollars in opioid sales during this time, right? We've seen that back today.
We've looked at sales reports that show that we sold those products during the time.
Billions of dollars for those opioid products.
That's what the sales figures reflected.
And did it through agreements with other companies too, didn't you?
We had agreements in place with other companies.
That generated opioid sales.
Yes.
You had agreements with Purdue.
Yes, we did.
You had agreements with Teva.
Yes, we did.
And the other thing we know, Mr. Matchett, is you sold those opioid prescriptions in Oklahoma, didn't you?
We sold them in all 50 states.
Including right here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Let's go back to that first day and talk about some of the questions that you were asked by Mr. Beckworth. And I'd like to begin by giving you a copy of the document he marked as Exhibit 1, the Johnson & Johnson Code of Business Conduct. Now, do you remember that Mr. Beckworth asked you quite a few questions about this Code of Business Conduct?
Yes.
I'd like to ask you some questions about a particular page that he spent a lot of time on, and that's page 6. And you see on page 6, in addition to the photos there and the graphics, there is text under the heading, "Who must follow the code?"
Yes.
Okay. And could you read the first sentence of the first paragraph?
All employees of Johnson & Johnson family of companies are required to comply with the Code of Business Conduct, company and laws that govern activities.
Okay, do you understand that? Well, how do you understand that particular sentence?
That would be all of those that are, all individuals who are employees of Johnson & Johnson.
All right. Now, you were also asked quite a few questions about the last paragraph on this page. Could you please read that entire paragraph to the jury?
Individuals and companies conducting business on our behalf must follow our Code of Business Conduct in addition to other relevant company policies. Applicable provisions of this code should be included in the contracts of third-party suppliers, manufacturers, contractors, vendors, and distributors doing business on behalf of Johnson & Johnson family of companies.
All right, let's focus on the first sentence, which, as you just read, begins, individuals and companies conducting business on our behalf must also follow our Code of Business Conduct. What do you understand the words conducting business on our behalf to mean?
So I interpret that as companies that are, individuals or companies that are representing Johnson & Johnson to the world. So an example would be company, say for example like Quintiles, who's a contract sales organization. So we would contract with them to actually sell our products. So this would apply to that instance.
All right, now what about manufacturers? Are there circumstances in which manufacturers are doing business or conducting business on Johnson & Johnson's behalf?
So it's very common in industry and for us to use contract manufacturers to actually produce our end products. So we would have agreements with other manufacturing organizations like a GSK, a Baxter, to actually manufacture our end product.
Okay, and when that happens, who sells the product?
Janssen would physically sell the product. We would physically do the marketing and sales of the product. Contract manufacturer is producing the product for us.
Now, back to that first sentence again, individuals and companies conducting business on our behalf. Is Purdue a company that ever conducted business on J&J's behalf?
No.
Okay. What was Purdue's relationship to J&J?
So when Purdue was purchasing API from Aramco, the relationship there would be as a customer. And then after they purchased the API and converted it to a finished product, they then became a competitor of Janssen since we were competing against them in the analgesic market.
Do you consider Purdue to have been a partner to J&J in any sense of that word?
No, I do not.
Now, Mr. Beckwith also asked you questions about what J&J should have done or not done after Purdue entered into a criminal plea agreement in 2007. Did J&J's Code of Business Conduct require J&J to do anything about Purdue's criminal plea agreement?
I don't believe as it's defined here in the Code of Business Conduct that it would have applied to Purdue in that instance.
Was Purdue conducting business on J&J's behalf?
No, they were not.
Now let's talk about Teva. Was Teva conducting business on J&J's behalf?
No, they were not.
What was Teva's relationship to J&J?
So once again, when Teva was purchasing API from Aramco, they would be a customer, and when they converted that API into a finished product, they would have then been a competitor of Janssen in the analgesic market.
Was Teva ever a partner of J&J?
No.
Now, I'd also like to show you a document that has not been previously marked. And our next exhibit in order would be, now I'll represent to you that Exhibit 35, which is entitled Supply Agreement, was produced in this litigation. It bears a production number at the bottom right corner of the page, beginning Jan-OK--001-52231. And this document has multiple pages. The concluding page is numbered 152261. And this was, I'll represent to you, a document produced by Janssen in this litigation. Do you know what Exhibit 35 is?
Well, it's stated at the top, it's a supply agreement between Aramco and Purdue. And I would assume it's to supply API.
Okay, and is this a document you looked at in preparation for today's deposition?
Yes.
Please turn to page 14. The numbers are at the top of the page. And I'd like you to read out loud for the jury section 22.0 at the bottom, which is titled Independent Contractor.
Parties relationship. The relationship between seller and buyer is that of an independent contractors, and nothing herein will be deemed to constitute, give rise to any employer-employee agency, partnership, or joint venture relationship among or between the parties. Neither party will have any express or implied rights or authority to assume or create any obligations on behalf of or in the name of the other party.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like you to now turn to page 10. Do you have an understanding as to what the word quota means in connection with API supply agreements?
Yes, my understanding of quota is that a manufacturer has to apply for a quota to the DEA on an annual basis for the products that they want to produce with that API. And so both the buyer of the API and the seller of the API have to have that quota information from the DEA in order to sell and purchase API.
When you say DEA, you mean?
The Drug Enforcement Agency.
Is that an arm of the United States government?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, so I'd like you now to read for the jury at the top of page 10, section 11.1, licenses. And before you do that, before you read this paragraph refers to buyer and seller. Under this contract, who is the buyer and who is the seller?
Under this contract, the buyer would be Purdue and the seller would be Noranco.
Right. Section 11.
Licenses. Buyer will be responsible for obtaining all necessary quota, licenses, permits, and authorizations from the DEA or any other relevant authority to enable buyer to take delivery of the product and convert into API. Seller will be responsible for obtaining all necessary quota, licenses, permits, and authorizations from the DEA or any other relevant authority for the importation of NRN.
Now, Mr. Beckworth asked you questions during the first day of deposition that established that even after Purdue's guilty plea in 2007, Noranco continued to provide API or sell API to Purdue. In fact, I would like to direct your attention to the first page of this document. In the top paragraph, what is the effective date of this supply agreement?
January 1st, 2008.
So was this supply agreement entered into after the 2007 plea agreement?
Yes.
So under this paragraph you read on page 10 having to do with quota, is it the case that the DEA would have had to have provided Purdue with the necessary quota in order for it to purchase API from Noranco under this agreement?
The DEA would have had to provide the quota.
And the DEA would have done that after Purdue's criminal plea agreement in 2007?
We must apply for quotas every year, so yes, they would have had to, it would have been after the guilty plea.
Your Honor, that's the end of that video submission. Thank you for staying a little late.
Thank you. Will, we will need the attorneys to stay, some of the attorneys to stay back so we can work on addition of exhibits before we go home. Otherwise, I'll excuse everybody else, and we'll start back up again tomorrow at 8:30.
8:30?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did I hear 9 o'clock?
Not so lucky.
He's staying down there.